Voters in Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio, and several other key states are hitting the polls today, determining critical races that will offer insight into the main issues motivating the American electorate just 1 year out from Election Day 2024. Now, polling currently has Trump ahead of Biden in almost all the swing states, -1, including Nevada and Georgia, 2 states that Trump lost in 2020. Plus, 1 month after the fighting broke out in the Middle East, Israel continues to absolutely steamroll Hamas without any of our money, by the way. This coming as the Israeli Defense Force enters Gaza and the White House approves sending guided munitions to assist in their offensive. But first, if you think the country is going to hell in a handbasket, vote. If you think it's doing great right now, lay off the bong and then go vote. Just do us a favor. If your side loses and you didn't vote, you don't get to complain about it. Let's do this. Before we get going today, folks, someone said to me on social media that they thought I lectured too much. Look, I don't mean to do that. I try to read as much as you guys send me on social media, as much as possible. And I want you to know that I'm not lecturing you. Most of you watching this are probably smarter than me. Almost all of you are more educated than me. I dropped out of college. This is just the 5 to 10 minutes a day of me where I get to rant about my opinion on whatever the issue I'm most passionate about. You may or may not agree with me, that's fine, but everything I tell you is how I genuinely feel, and I enjoy having that conversation with you every night. So that said, it is election day in 37 states in some variety of level. And I cannot express to you how important it is to go vote. People have died for this right, folks. It's not just you, too. Drag 15, 20, 30 people with you. Polls are open for like another few hours, depending on what state you're in. I'd rather you start calling your friends and getting them to the polls than watch this show, honestly. There are both positions and issues on these ballots, and we're going to get to all those in a minute, but this is game day. All the campaigning, all the bazillion yard signs cluttering up every inch of public property, the door knocking, the op-eds, the rallies, the money spent. Today is the day. We've basically been force-fed polls for the last few months on this candidate or that issue, but the only poll that matters is today. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is when I'm at dinner with friends, Republican friends, that complain about this or that. They didn't like Joe Biden. Yeah, neither do I, but I voted and they didn't. Just shut up if you don't vote. You don't get to complain because you had a chance to make a difference. Every vote counts, and you didn't go to the polls. It's frustrating. It hurts my soul. The 2020 elections drew a higher turnout than anything we've ever seen in decades. But you know what percentage voted? According to a Pew Research Center tabulation of official state returns, it was only 62.8% of eligible voters. That means that more than 37% of Americans who could vote did not. There's really interesting numbers to consider here, though. In an ABC poll, more than 75% of U.S. residents of eligible voters say they feel the country is headed in the wrong direction. Weird. I wonder if we're going to see 75% of each state and local election turn out to vote Republican in today's elections or even next year. What's even crazier is that all the evidence shows that everything the Democrats are doing is failing. Just look around you. I mean, all of it is failing on such a biblical level. I am talking Old Testament catastrophe here. They have now started to just come out and lie about it because they got nothing else. I mean, look, most politicians are pretty dishonest. We all know that. But this is some next level stuff. Somehow they will both blame Republicans and say their plan is working at the same time. Take the border, for example.
The border is closed. The border is secure.
Our current situation is the outcome of Congress leaving a broken, outdated immigration system in place for over 2 decades, despite unanimous agreement that we desperately need legislative reform.
The same guy said 2 entirely different things, literally like a week or 2 apart. The 2 are mutually exclusive. Do they think we're not paying attention? Republicans have a plan. We had one. These are the numbers. It was under Trump versus Biden. It was working under Trump. Alejandro, you and your overly educated liberals messed it all up. And when these guys get called on it, they just lie some more. I mean, pick another issue. Lockdowns. It was Republican-led Florida that led the nation in opening up. And by the way, the Democrats flocked to vacation there also, which I find hilarious. But now, big left tyrants in California, Michigan, New York, they strangled their economy. I was kicked out of restaurants here in Manhattan for not having a Vax card. And now you have the same Democrats saying, oh, we never did that. We never forced you to get vaxxed. Yes, you did. You tried to have everyone fired who didn't go along with your garbage. This tyranny is on the ballot. You need to vote like your life depends on it, because it might depend on it based on the crazy policies the left is imposing on a variety of issues. Seriously. Democrats are realizing this. And even their own voters are like, hey, wait a minute here. That's why you have these nut jobs like these people, these guys right here that are going up to peaceful Republican poll workers this morning.
You might as well have been walking up to my head on the way to the polling station, putting a gun in my head, trying to tell me not to vote. You try to overthrow elections with violence, and then you're out here among decent people. You try to steal my vote next year, I'm going to remember you personally.
Thank you.
Try not to be buddy-buddy with these people, because they put on the face of a good neighbor, but they support lynch mobs and KKK, or they're Bible-beating bigots and freaks.
You Republican MAGA are scum. You're scum, buddy.
More from the party of tolerance, I guess. Look, they have no policies. Their policy is, look at how bad the other party is because we say so. There's no Republicans supporting lynch mob. Like, this guy is insane. They're unhinged. They're doing this because their policies always fail. Of the top 10 worst cities in America, 8 are Democrat. 1 Republican, and that's in Mississippi, but, you know, 1 is independent also, I guess. But most of those Democratic cities have been run by Democrats exclusively since before I was alive, and they still blame Republicans. Look, elections have consequences. It's no longer just good enough for you to go vote. You got to bring at least 10 friends with you. I don't know. I don't think these off-year elections, you know, should be taken for granted. If you don't think they matter, let me tell you why they do. All elections are local. Those are the people who decide your taxes, your kids' schools, a variety of other issues. It all starts local. I know it's an off year, but you need to get involved, folks. And when you see polls that Republicans are like way ahead in this or that, it's not a chance for you to stay home. Even if you're behind. I mean, Lee Zeldin would have won if all the Republicans had gone out and voted in New York, but they didn't. It's a chance for us to double down, grab your friends, send a message so clear that another Democrat will not be elected for the rest of our lifetimes. And for you Democrats out there watching, I know you do. I get your hatred on social media. On your way to the polls, fill up your car. Go grocery shopping. Pay your electrical bill. Look at your 401k. And then decide if you really want to keep marching into the flames of stupid. Joining me now to discuss, Hoover Institute Senior Fellow and the author of Dying Citizen, Victor Davis Hanson. Sir, honor to have you back on. Why do you think a lot of people in this country, 37%, don't go vote?
Well, I think they have this psychology that, what is my vote? I'm just one person. They don't look at it in the aggregate. They never think, well, if everybody thought like I do, then we would lose. But my one vote will not make a difference when we look at they rationalize the fact that they're either lazy or they're too busy. So they come up with this sort of projected idea that I'm not responsible for the outcome because I'm only one vote. And they never think about the mentality that pervades everybody if they were to follow that advice or that performance.
Well, sir, you can see.
That's one thing.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, finish.
Well, that's one. And the other is, unfortunately, it affects conservatives. There's a distaste for politicians, and they look at the border, as you said, they look at crime, they look at the foreign policy, they look at inflation, and they think it doesn't, the whole country's going to hell, and it doesn't matter who I vote. It does matter, but they feel that the deficit grows and the debt grows and the bureaucracy grows, and the agencies are weaponized and they're all against the citizen, and no matter whom we elect, it doesn't seem to stop. So they despair, and they just sort of, they have a monastery of the mind. They tune out. They don't watch television. They don't go to the movies. Right. They don't watch the NBA. They just said, I'm done with it. And that's not a healthy response to the crisis.
Sure. And like I said, you can see here, 66% of the voting eligible people turned out for the 2020 election. But you've got an entire Democratic Party that now votes on emotion, whereas Republicans are voting on policy. How do we carry those arguments across party lines and say, like, hey, guys, look, everything was better under Republican policy. It's okay. Just dye your hair back to the normal color it's supposed to be and not purple, and come on over and be part of the solution.
Well, I think we have to boomerang back their arguments or show that they're projecting. So if they say, well, Republicans are selfish and racist, then we show how these policies are actually racist, this fixation on race. Or if they say Donald Trump is colluding or he's corrupt or his family, we say, compared to Joe Biden, you overlook it. So I think that part of the left-wing mystique is to whatever they're vulnerable about, they project that onto other people to make them defensive. And we've got to, just as a rule, say anytime they accuse anybody of some misdeed, it's a window into their soul. And that's how the left-wing mind works. And they're hypocritical. So they say, well, you know, the rich run that country. We've got to tax the rich. We've got to say, well, Joe Biden was a rich person, and his whole career was based on avoiding income tax, and he's lecturing us. And the bicoastal elite have nothing in common. They're the richest people in the history of civilization. They're most privileged. They have jets. They have. Why would you people vote for them? And just because they mount. So I think you can puncture that veneer and say, look at these people. They're selfish, and they're wealthy, and they're privileged, and that's who's run the Democratic Party, and they're also racist and anti-Semitic. Yeah. And I think they're really vulnerable. They don't like that when people accuse them of what they accuse in others.
Yeah, well, that is the hard thing. But you know, the problem is for the first time, I think I shouldn't say the first time in the history of the world, but in like the first time that I've really observed it, people are marching in droves to simply vote their own rights away. How have we got here?
I don't think they know what they're doing. I mean, I think the average person that does that feels that he does not want to be called a racist. He doesn't want to be called a xenophobe, a sexist. He doesn't want to be called a protectionist, a restrictionist. So whether it's the border or crime, he thinks, you know what, if I stand up for what I know is commonsensical, they're going to ostracize me, because they control the institutions. They control Google. They control corporate boardroom, entertainment, sports, K through 12, academia. And I don't want to go up against all that. So I'll just nod, keep out of it, and kind of look at my own private life, my family, my community, and see if I can get by. And they don't realize that they will come for you, whether you think they cannot. Eventually they will come for you. Yeah. Because the system is against you, and you've got to speak up and take a hazard and a risk. And that's hard to convince people. They just want to be left alone. Yeah. They would rather be called a child molester than a sexist or racist.
Wow.
You know. That's what the left has prepped the battlefield brilliantly.
Yeah, it is shocking to me that we can have that level of discourse in this thing and all the things going wrong, like you said, hell in a handbasket, and we still have people voting away their own rights. Victor Davis Hanson, honor to have you on, sir.
Thank you for having me.
All right. So coming up, the conflict between Israel and Palestine has reached a point of no return. Do not go anywhere. More Frontline after this. All right, so today marks exactly 1 month since Hamas' surprise terrorist attack, killing more than 1,400 innocent Israelis and leaving 240 still held hostage in the Gaza Strip. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wasn't even open to discussing a ceasefire, and I don't blame him, unless all the hostages are released. This, as he maintains that Israel will take over all security responsibilities in Gaza indefinitely once the war ends, making it pretty clear they intend to win this war. Joining me now to discuss, actor and former speechwriter to Presidents Nixon and Ford, Mr. Ben Stein, also the author of the new book, The Peacemaker, Nixon, the Man, the President, my friend Ben Stein. Sir, this is an interesting thing because Netanyahu has said, I'm not even compromising. For so long, we've seen world leaders just compromise away, and then the same thing happens. He's sticking to his guns here, literally.
Very impressive man, and of course, he was goaded into this hardline position by perhaps the most atrocious war crime, the crime against humanity that we have seen since the end of World War II. Crimes against humanity, against the women, children, old people, totally innocent, even infants within their mother's wombs. a series of crimes against children that nobody had ever seen anything like for a very long time. And I don't know what to say, except it's just horrifying. And I don't know what to say about it. It was just something that I don't think anyone could have imagined that it would happen.
Right.
That this would happen in 2023. I mean, it was off the map.
Yeah. Well, pro-Palestine protesters obviously tried to climb into the White House fence. I mean, this is insane. This is like the left's January 6th. They smeared paint all over the gates and statues and other things in the area. And look, I say if you don't like it, get out.
Absolutely. If you don't like it, get out. This is the most humane, kind, generous, caring country in the world that has ever been in the history of the world. There's never been any place like the United States of America. We, as Americans, are so grateful for America. We are so grateful for the police, the armed forces, everyone in America who has protected us and treated us like we're children of heaven. We do not deserve to have this kind of horror visited upon us. And let's pray it doesn't come back anytime in our life.
I sure hope so. But here's another one that's interesting to me, which is insane because we're not going to change U.S. policy for a bunch of whiny millennials here. Joe Biden's own staffer are criticizing the president for his pro-Israel stance. I mean, look, I got a lot of things to criticize Biden about.
We're talking about insanity here.
Yeah. I mean, but they want these kids want the president of the United States and the United States to change our policy for going back, I don't know how long, because they're offended.
Yeah, well, it's incredible. I mean, we have, as you said, whiny crybabies, but they're not whiny crybabies. They're murderers. They're killers. They are people who try to harm, torture, torment as many human beings as they can.
Well, I'm separating the White House staffers. I'm talking about the White House staffers that are criticizing Biden.
I'm talking about that too, sir. We are talking about people who are extremely stupid, who are extremely evil, and who are in a position to do a lot of harm to the world in general. It's a terrifying situation. I beg you, whoever is watching and thinking of this, remember, we are talking about killers, just horrible, bloodthirsty killers. And it's, I don't even know where to start in terms of its evil. I think there were people on Adolf Hitler's staff, people on Adolf Hitler's mind, people on Adolf Hitler's evil, because they didn't have cell phones. They were just evil, thoroughly evil people trying to do even more evil.
Yeah. Well, Mr. Stein, before I let you go, your new book, The Peacemaker.
Please don't let me go. I want to be here.
Yeah, your new book, it's obviously about Nixon. Now, not a lot of people remember Nixon from Watergate. You wrote this book about him being your friend. Tell us about it.
I met him a long time ago. I met him close up and personal because my father, Herbert Stein, was chairman of the President's Council of Economic Advisors. I met him and befriended him, and he befriended me in 72, 73, 74. We remained friends until then, until his demise, until he left office, and then until his demise. This was a man who saved Israel. This was a man who was criticized as being a racist and an anti-Semite. He was not either of those things. He was a humanitarian, kind-hearted, brave person. He risked nuclear war to save the children of Israel from Russian mass killers and Palestinian mass killers. He was a hero for the ages.
Yeah, well, it's a very timely release of that book. Mr. Ben Stein, appreciate your time, sir.
It's my great pleasure, sir. God bless you, and God bless America.
All right. Well, coming up, Biden makes yet another announcement involving your tax dollars. But what's to say he's going to use it for the right time and efficiently this time? Well, look at that and much more in our Culture Clash coming up. Well, the circumstances surrounding President Trump's legal battles are getting more and more bizarre by the day. Judge Engoron's reputation is being judged, whether he admits it or not, in the court of public opinion. Now, what impact could his actions have on the actual American judicial system and how it responds to public pressure? Joining me now, someone at the heart of the issue, the executive vice president of the Trump Organization, Eric Trump, via phone. Eric, I know that there's not a lot you can talk about under this gag order from this specific president, but what are you seeing about the motion behind you, your father, your family in support versus what the Democrats thought would take away from support from your father?
Well, it's like everything else. They dig so far, they end up finding themselves, Carl, right? And everything backfires on them, right? Russia ended up backfiring on them, and every other political stunt ended up backfiring on them. And this is because, frankly, my father's running away in the polls. You see it better than anybody. I mean, New York Times Siena poll 2 days ago has him winning in 5 out of 6 battleground states, which means he gets over 300 electoral, points, meaning he's the next president of the United States. And it drives him crazy, which is why they're orchestrating all this madness. They're trying to throw my father in jail. They're trying to deprive him of his company. And, Carl, it's deeply personal to me. You know me better than anybody, and you know I run the company. And we have an unbelievable company. We have some of the greatest assets anywhere in the world. We have never missed a payment. We have never defaulted on a note. We've never gotten so much as a default notice. We've never broken a loan covenant. And every single one of our lenders has gone out and testified that we're one of the greatest borrowers they've ever had. We go out, we buy trophy properties, we put a tremendous amount of our own equity into it. We've never had a default. We've never breached a covenant in any loan document. We are amazing borrowers. And you have an attorney general in New York who literally values Mar-a-Lago, which is one of the most expensive properties in the world, at $18 million. I mean, that's what we're up against right now. People see it as a sham. They see what's happening in the courtroom. My father's being told not to talk. I don't care about your opinion. I don't want to hear your opinion. And people understand exactly what this is. And what's really interesting, Carl, is they never go to Republican areas to do this. Why is it that the deepest, darkest blue areas, are always the places that go after Donald Trump? And, does it ever feel like sometimes these people are being handpicked to persecute my father? I mean, it certainly does to me. It's not coincidence after the 97th time. And that's what they're doing here. But what they don't realize is there's thousands of employees that I have. These are great, hardworking New Yorkers. And literally, I have people calling me at night saying, "Hey, am I going to lose my job? Am I going to have a job in 2 weeks?" And the games that these people are playing for political reasons it's horrible. They're unthinkable, and it's frankly un-American.
Yeah. Well, it was actually Maggie Haberman was even surprised by your dad's testimony, claiming that she didn't expect him to take any ownership and was surprised that he didn't distance himself. And look, you guys distanced yourself to some extent because obviously, you were telling exactly what your involvement was at certain times, dating back sometimes 10, 20 years. This was a chance for your father to really kind of get on stand, talk about what the real stuff was, and he was blocked from saying that. What does this say to judges everywhere in America who are watching the public pressure on this judge and saying, I don't want to turn out like that guy? Do you think this is going to influence the judicial system based on public opinion for the first time, I think, ever?
I mean, Carl, I think all you want them to do is be honest. Under any other court and any other judge, this thing would have been thrown out in day one. You know why? Because there's no victims. In fact, the very people that they're claiming are victims are testifying on the stand saying that we're, again, one of the best lenders they've ever had. I mean, Deutsche Bank, for instance, testified that they made hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars off of Trump. We're great borrowers. We delivered these projects. We did an unbelievable job. Yeah. And it's really interesting. I mean, the Attorney General, who literally campaigned on the promise of taking down Donald Trump, he brought Don and I into it, and Ivanka, because she could sit in the courtroom for one extra day and fundraise off the fact that we were on the stand when every single accounting firm said we had nothing to do with this case. We never worked on a personal statement of financial condition because why would we, right? Why would we work on a – I'm out there, and you know this better than anybody because you know me extremely well, but I'm building hotels and I'm building golf courses and I'm acquiring properties. You think I'm doing back office functions? But despite that, all the accountants, all the controllers, all the outside accounting firms, despite the fact that every single one of them has testified to the fact that Don had nothing to do with this case, Ivanka had nothing to do with this case, I have nothing to do with this case, they drag us in because they want the collateral damage of naming as many Trumps as humanly possible. And, last but not least, Carl, I think the reason my father's taking ownership of it is frankly, the numbers are low. Mar-a-Lago is one of the most valuable properties in the world. The portfolio is undervalued. It's not overvalued. It's undervalued in the statement of financial condition. The amount of assets that aren't on the developments, zoning entitlements, different things that weren't even included in the statement of financial conditions. How about my father's brand, which is probably his greatest asset.
Yeah.
It wasn't listed. It wasn't mentioned. But these facts don't matter to the judge. And by the way, one other thing, Carl. You've got 3 pages of disclaimers, which are, these are our values. These are what we believe our properties are worth. If you have differing values, go out and do your own appraisals or go do your own work. Don't take our word for it. Do your own due diligence, which every bank has to do because they're regulated institutions. You think Deutsche Bank can take Donald Trump's word for what his net worth is? And of course they can't. They'd be out of business the next day, if they did that to everybody in the country. If, Carl, how much is your house worth? Okay, I'm going to give you that amount. Of course they can't take somebody's word for it. They do their own due diligence. But, again, logic and facts don't matter in a court. That's purely political. And that's the sham that my father has dealt with and that I'm dealing with. And since he came down that golden escalator.
Well, and Eric, I will say just before I let you go that I remember talking to you during COVID, and your primary concern was making sure that every single one of your employees kept their jobs so they could pay their mortgages and things like that. And it's a real testament to you and how your company is run. So, Eric Trump, we appreciate being here.
Thanks, Carl.
All right. Man, what they're doing to him is criminal.
Historic investment in America's railroads. I've been talking about this for a long time, I know, but finally we're getting it done. More than $16 billion, 16 with a B, billion dollars here in the Northeast part.
Well, that was President Biden announcing yet another project, probably a project failure, actually, but not the worst of intentions of his presidency. I myself am an avid user of the transit system to get in and out of Manhattan, and it's a complete disaster. In fact, New York City alone, there are at least 3.2 million subway riders every single day. That's just as in 2022. Now, imagine this. Only 28% of trains are on time, which means that in 2022, Amtrak passengers were delayed by a total of 11 weeks. That's insane. Keep in mind, that is in comparison to trains in Japan that are never more than 1 minute late. 1 minute total. I mean, now besides people, our trains also carry a ton of goods. In a typical year, U.S. freight railroads move around 1.6 billion tons across nearly 140,000 miles of track. The rail industry is already heavily subsidized. So what's the problem here? The problem is that the government sucks at spending money. It's just terrible at it. Very little of that money will actually make it to the tracks, just like what happened in California, where it's been 15 years, over $9 billion invested, and not a single track has been laid in their effort to build some electric green dream train from L.A. to San Fran. Joining me now to discuss Turning Point USA contributor Savannah Hernandez and the Common Sense Cowboy, Patrick Doranson. All right, Savannah, what do you think about this pouring money into something that probably will never get built?
Hey, we've continued to print billions of dollars. We're already $33 trillion in debt. What's a couple more billion of dollars in the United States being, allocated to something that, like you said, probably isn't going to get done? If anything, this story looks like it could potentially have some, validity to it, some good things for the American public. Typically, we see billions of our dollars going overseas as opposed to being reinvested into American infrastructure. But again, similar to what we saw in California, is the government actually going to utilize this for the American people? I highly doubt it.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, obviously trains are its own thing, but the American housing market, now look, voting day today, I saw signs all over my hometown of Greenwich with Democrats save home values. Home buyers are facing the most unaffordable housing market since 1980 because of Democrats. Mortgage rates are at a 23-year high, 8% for a lot of people. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, well, I remember those days. I'm old enough to have been around then. My first mortgage that I got in 1986 was 11%. Now, let's look at life. Right now, back in that last year of the Carter administration, what did we have? We had 13% interest rates, 11% inflation, and we had 52 American hostages sitting in Tehran. Today, we have interest rates at about 8% for a 30-year fixed. We got inflation at 4%, although it's probably higher if you include fuel and food. And we've got 240 hostages in Gaza, 10 of which are Americans. So I guess that's progress. The only thing that is the same is we got incompetent Democrats running things. I don't want to go back to the 1980s during my golden years.
Yeah. I mean, that actually is pretty crazy to me that there are that many similarities. But Savannah Hernandez, Patrick Doranson, I'm sorry we got to leave it right there today. Appreciate you both being here.
You bet.
All right. Coming up, as polls get ready to close, residents throughout the country await the results of today's election. We're going to look at what is at stake, what's on the ballot, and what's next for America when Frontline comes back. Well, Ohio is seeing actually some super high turnout so far this election day. About 855,000 showed up early to cast their ballots, with polls getting ready to close in the next, I think, hour, actually. Residents around the country, though, are awaiting these results. Well, joining me now to discuss, pollster at McLaughlin and Associates and pollster for the Trump 2024 campaign, Jim McLaughlin, along with president of the Convention of States Action and co-founder of Tea Party Patriots, Mark Meckler. All right, so Jim, big issue in Ohio. Tell us about it.
Yeah, no, what's going on in Ohio, obviously they have an abortion referendum. And what you're seeing across the country, whether it's in Ohio, whether it's in, believe it or not, places like New York and New Jersey, the Democrats are consistently demagoguing on the issue of abortion. Quite honestly, they're lying on the issue of abortion. They're saying in a lot of these states, they're trying to ban abortion, which isn't the truth right now. And they're going back to the 22 midterm playbook where they basically demagogued on the issue and they think they were successful at it. It's going to be really interesting tonight to see what happens, because I think at the end of the day, I think the voters are a lot smarter than these crazy left-wing Democrats are. And I think in the end, they're going to be voting on things like their pocketbook. They're going to be voting on issues like crime and safety. So I think really what it's going to come down is common sense. And the other interesting part is, real quickly too, is you don't see Joe Biden in any of these Democratic campaigns. You see the Democrats running away from Joe Biden, and you see people like Daniel Cameron in Kentucky who are embracing Donald Trump and his agenda.
Well, actually, Mark, that was going to be my question is, like, look, Virginia, there's a lot of things on the ballot and a lot of the state house, state senate on the ballot in Virginia right now. This is like a national barometer, and Joe Biden's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, although you saw in Virginia just in the last week, you had Joe Biden and Kamala Harris endorse 23 Democrat candidates, but they hadn't weighed in, and I don't think it's going to help them to weigh in. They have a very popular governor there in Youngkin, and I think he is going to be the outsized influence in those races.
Yeah, but Mark, what can we take away from the election today? Because we have like constables and town councils and board of educations. Those are the majority elections, some state houses and things like that. But what can we take away from all these in 37 states tonight about the national barometer of where we might go in 24?
Yeah, I think what we should be looking at is grassroots turnout and the turnout for both the parties. We're going to be able to gauge enthusiasm for elections. Right now, the advantage on enthusiasm looks like it goes to Republicans, but I also agree abortion is a major issue, and that's going to drive Democrat turnout. So we should be watching for that in a state like Ohio. Yeah,
but Jim, what are you seeing out of Virginia? Because that, like, the Glenn Youngkin election was a litmus test, just like, you know, the Massachusetts Scott Brown was the litmus test against, the Senate in Massachusetts against Barack Obama. He was the kind of the litmus down there in Virginia. What are you seeing out of there, and what can we take from that nationally?
Look, it looks to me you're seeing a lot of enthusiasm. We worked on a couple of legislative races down there. We were doing much better in terms of early voting. And look, the Democrats, to their credit, functionally, now they did it for all the wrong reasons during COVID on all this vote by mail and early voting and what stuff. But I think the Republicans are starting to catch up on it. And I also think, look, even just like you were saying, Carl, these are local elections, but many of these local elections, Joe Biden is on the ballot. And you're seeing in a place like Virginia, Glenn Youngkin's agenda is very popular, and Joe Biden and the Democrats' agenda is very unpopular, especially when it comes to the issues that the voters care about most.
Yeah. And I think people are really realizing that after 3 years of super high gas prices. Jim McLaughlin, Mark Meckler, appreciate you both being here.
Great to be here.
All right. Coming up, a new report shows government officials working with big tech in a major West Coast college to suppress online free speech ahead of the 2020 election. I thought they said they didn't do that. We're going to discuss that in our threat assessment. Big tech hates conservatives, period, full stop. We all know this, even though they continuously deny it. Now, I know people on the left will say, oh, that's not happening. But this time, there is a ton of proof, folks. A disturbing new report from House Judiciary Republicans, led by Congressman Jim Jordan, of course, details that the Department of Homeland Security, part of the federal government that's not supposed to suppress speech, partnered with Stanford University and other colleges to create a disinformation group. And this is a different disinformation campaign from the Nina Jankowicz disaster. This one is about the 2020 election, and of course, no surprise, most of that suppressed speech was among you and I, conservatives. Now, documents show the group called the Election Integrity Partnership worked directly with DHS Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency to flag, suppress, and remove online speech in coordination with big tech companies. We told you it was happening. Now, candidates like Donald Trump, entities like us here at Newsmax, even the Babylon Bee, were targeted by this group. I know, shocker, right? So if you thought this was happening all along, turns out you were right. Joining me now to discuss, former Homeland Security Department advisor and Newsmax contributor Charles Marino, and former New York State Homeland Security advisor and Redland Securities Director Michael Balboni. All right, so, Michael, I'm looking at this and I'm like, yeah, we all knew this was happening. We might not have had the proof, but the numbers showed it. So what happens now?
So what we're seeing is a really disturbing trend, whether it's this type of censorship or the development of artificial intelligence. It's being controlled by big tech. What's the problem there? There's no accountability. You can't throw them out of office. What's their motivation? Profit. So I'm a capitalist. I don't have a problem with profit. But now when it comes to civil liberties, now when it comes to the most personal information, and then you say, well, we work with Stanford University, great university. The problem is they also don't have accountability or transparency. They only gave up the individual data that they had after they were subpoenaed and then were threatened with a court order to have it revealed. Yeah. So much for transparency.
Yeah. No, but Charles, this goes deeper. Former Facebook employee Arto Bejer, I think his name was, testifying on Capitol Hill today, alleging that the company failed to act on reports of harassment and harm facing teens on the platform. Listen to this. No, we don't have that. Okay, so we don't have the soundbite, but I mean, you can see the headline right there. That it's just it's massively crazy that we're having this problem, and yet there is what Michael said. There's no accountability, and the government, who's not supposed to suppress any speech at all, is just farming it out to third parties.
Well, the social media companies don't care because they don't have to care. They don't have any liability. It's Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. You heard Senator Josh Hawley talk about it today in the hearing. And so Congress needs to step up and start holding these social media companies accountable by changing or removing Section 230 to make these companies liable for what's happening on their platforms. And as far as the government involvement within DHS, we're seeing the fourth branch of government at work here. It's called the bureaucracy. If you don't control it, it's going to control you. And some even bring up that it might have become uncontrollable at this point in time.
But Michael, we talk about accountability and how there is none and there's no way to rein in these private companies. Federal grants go to groups and organizations like this NewsGuard targeting conservatives for it's almost always fake misinformation claims. Well, I mean, will anybody be perp walked for this?
No, I don't think anybody would be perp walked, because this is really a part of this whole information issue that's out there right now. People don't necessarily appreciate the fact that we're in a real conflict when it comes to information. We saw it in the 2016 elections. 2020 was there as well, whether it's chatbots trying to incite people, get different types of information out there. There's a huge issue with integrity, information integrity. This is not the way to do it. And you know what? This began under President Trump. This was an initiative that they wanted to take a look at. Okay, so they did. It didn't work. We need to understand what exactly happened so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I agree. Michael, Charles, unfortunately, we got to leave it right there. Appreciate both stopping by.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, more Frontline coming right back. Hey, we've been talking about it a lot. Newsmax Plus just launched. It's Newsmax's new streaming app that lets you watch Newsmax on your home TV or your smartphone anytime, anywhere, just like the old days. If you're a regular cable or satellite subscriber, you can continue to watch Newsmax like you're doing now. Nothing else changes. But many people love Newsmax Plus. In fact, in just a few days, more than 100,000 people signed up for it. They're like you. They're tired of this big media, and they really like us here at Newsmax. So you should sign up, try your free trial. Just go to newsmaxplus.com to sign in. The trial is completely free, folks. Once you're signed in, you go to the Newsmax app on your home TV or smartphone and just start watching. Newsmax Plus works just like Netflix and other Plus services, so you can watch us and other great shows like Greta Van Susteren, Greg Kelly, Eric Bolling, Rob Schmidt, and continue to see all of our great guests like Mike Huckabee, Carrie Lake, Alan Dershowitz, Rick Santorum, Dick Morris, and a ton more. The 2024 presidential race is already kicking off right now, so get the latest news in the race for the White House. A Newsmax Plus subscription gives you all of our shows and all of our archives and great new specials with President Trump, stories about the Biden administration, and even history and current affairs programs that help inform and educate you and your family. Now, Newsmax Plus is growing. It's going to be really big, actually, folks. So download the Newsmax app on your home's TV or your smartphone or wherever you watch TV and start watching now. Start with your free trial. If you like us, continue. Just remember, a monthly subscription costs less than like a cup of coffee at Starbucks, honestly. So get started today. Go to newsmaxplus.com. Sign up for free trial. I subscribe, telling my friends to do it. They're doing it too. You should join. Go to newsmaxplus.com right now, folks, and they'll get to it. And like I was saying, if you know somebody who has not got to the polls yet today, call them up. Get them out there. We need every single person voting. I'm getting reports on my phone in my hometown. I'm so proud. We are seeing record turnout. Make sure your town is part of that. There are a lot of things on the ballot today. And also, bigger than any single issue that's on the ballot today is the message it's going to send about who is the serious party going into 2024. Folks, we don't have that much time left before everything implodes, before we reach a point of no return. And as I come on here, and I'm just giving it to you straight, as honest as I can, I'm really nervous about the next year of our country. Can we survive? Can we not do enough damage so that it can't be fixed over the next 4 years with President Trump? That's what I'm concerned about. And I need you to be a part of that solution. I need you to grab your friends, get on the phones, and make sure everybody voted today. In those 37 states, something important is on the ballot. Please. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I appreciate you watching very much. We'll be same time, same place tomorrow. Greta's next. Stick around. See you tomorrow.
This is election night 2023, and in just a short time, dozens of states will be counting ballots. These races are important to you, no matter which state you live in. What is at stake for you straight ahead? Plus, the special prosecutor David Weiss, in charge of the Hunter Biden investigation since 2018, and who has made several mysterious decisions, was questioned today behind closed doors. As you may remember, in October of last year, Weiss decided not to charge Hunter Biden. Then in the spring, after whistleblowers came forward and testified before Congress questioning the decisions of the prosecutor David Weiss, he suddenly changed his mind. He went from no charges last fall to then a sweetheart misdemeanor plea offer for the president's son. And then there were more developments. A federal judge took one look at the sweetheart deal, thought something was not right, and refused to accept it. And then, well, the mystery continues. Prosecutor Weiss suddenly asked Attorney General Merrick Garland to appoint him as a special counsel over the Hunter Biden case. The Attorney General did so, and then it continues to get stranger. As the newly minted special prosecutor, he then indicted Hunter for 3 felonies for the very same facts he had a year ago. Nothing changed in the facts. Now Special Prosecutor Weiss, in the course of 1 year, went from, on the same facts, no charges, to a misdemeanor with a bizarre plea deal, to 3 felonies, which are now pending. Meanwhile, as I noted, there were no changes in facts. The only changes were in the special prosecutor's mind. This is weird. Today, Weiss is questioned behind closed doors. We're going to have more in a few minutes, but first, police are investigating the death of a Jewish man as a homicide and possible hate crime. Yesterday, 69-year-old Paul Kessler died of head injuries. He suffered them after pro-Israel and pro-Palestine protests clashed outside of Los Angeles. Police say Kessler fell backward, hitting his head. Who or what caused the fall is the subject of the investigation. Also today, the House votes on not 1, but 2 resolutions to censure Michigan Democratic Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib. Yesterday, the 2 resolutions were introduced separately, one by Georgia Congressman Rick McCormick, the other by Georgia Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. This afternoon, the House voted to advance Congressman McCormick's resolution, teeing that resolution up for a final vote. Also tonight, the House will hold a procedure vote on Congresswoman Green's resolution. Both resolutions cited a video that you are about to see. It was posted by Congresswoman Tlaib on social media showing protesters chanting an anti-Semitic phrase used by Hamas terrorists. Congresswoman Tlaib also tweeted in part, quote, "From the river to the sea is an aspirational call for freedom, human rights, and peaceful coexistence, not death, destruction, or hate." An Israeli scholar whose daughter was murdered by Hamas terrorists is standing by to tell you the meaning and origin of the phrase, "from the river to the sea." But first, here's what some of Tlaib's fellow Democrats are saying about what she said.
From the river to the sea means the destruction of Israel and everyone who's in it. Okay, just like Mein Kampf is not a coloring book, and the final solution means exactly what Hitler meant it to mean. If a censure comes on her misinformation on the hospital bombing, which obviously we know was not true, that she continued to spread even after intelligence came out, it wasn't true, and on from the river to the sea, I would support that censure.
Slogans like the river to the sea, if that means the destruction of Israel, that's not going to work.
Notice that Senator Bernie Sanders, who's Jewish, used the term if. He said, if that means the destruction of Israel. Well, of course it does. And he should have condemned what Tlaib said, not use that if business. Another Democrat, Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, tweeted, quote, "This phrase means eradicating Israel and Jews, period. Dressing it up in a new PR ploy won't change that," end quote. Now, Wasserman Schultz should have tagged in her tweet both Senator Sanders and Congresswoman Tlaib so they could read the meaning of the phrase, "from the river to the sea." Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Ohio, Congressman Mike Turner joins me. Good evening, sir. And I want to ask you about the Congressman. First, though, I want to turn to terrorism here in this country because of your position as the chair. Has the terrorism threat been increased since October 7th in this country?
So, Greta, last week, Director Wray, director of the FBI, testified before the Senate that he believed that the terrorism risk or threat to the United States was higher than it has been in a decade. Today, this morning, I and other members of the Intelligence Committee received a briefing from Director Wray. It was not classified, where he reiterated his concerns. And really, with the intelligence that my committee members and myself have been looking at, we concur that this is a very risky time. In talking to Director Wray, he went on to point out that the risk is of a terrorist attack in the United States, that the individuals aligned with international terrorist organizations represent an ongoing threat in the United States, both those that either take their inspiration from Hamas, Hezbollah, and ISIS, but even those who are affiliated with them. He also cited the issue of the border, that those coming across the border that we don't have control over, that those individuals, not having been through any vetting process, some of which have terrorist ties, and a few have been on the terrorist watch list themselves, represent an ongoing threat for increased terrorist attacks. So his concerns are real. We asked him about how the work to try to ensure that these groups do not undertake terrorist attacks and how we might be able to support his efforts.
Does he have actual knowledge or information or chat or anything else? Because naturally, after October 7th, and we've seen so many protests in this country that are anti-Semitic, whether on campuses or other places, and we've seen, what's happened the last 2 weeks. Sort of common sense suggests, especially since we have an open border, that there's an increased risk. And there have been hateful things said about the United States. But does he have actual information that should alert us? I mean, more than just sort of your common sense. Of course, this is a dangerous time.
Right. Well, as I was pointing out, it's the actual intelligence that we're receiving also that my committee members are looking at. As you know, post 9/11, we've made certainly in the counterterrorism area, that we're very diligent in listening, in looking to individuals who might be communicating with outside groups and organizations and terrorist groups and organizations, and in trying to map and discern, if you will, those groups or organizations that might be here and how they're relating to one another and what threats they pose. And that's why he's raising the alarm. It is absolutely a real threat, and this represents a very difficult time.
All right, last week you voted against the resolution, advancing the resolution to condemn, or whatever the term is, Congressman Tlaib for what she has promoted. Was there any particular reason or that they voted, and how are you voting on today's?
Yes, well, as you know, because I think you covered this, Marjorie Taylor Greene's condemnation resolution included facts and circumstances that weren't accurate or true. It's unfortunate when an individual doesn't work with other members of Congress when they bring forth a resolution where they're trying to condemn another member. Rich McCormick has worked collectively with people in Congress. It even includes representation of issues concerning the intelligence information that we had concerning the attack that occurred on the hospital in Gaza and the very wrong accusations that Israel was subject to that. So, his approach is obviously to be truthful and to bring to the floor a resolution that reflects really what people find objectionable about her statements, the threatening nature. After coming off of these horrific, awful, evil attacks that occurred in Israel, we should be unifying as a people and in support of Israel and against terror, and certainly her inflammatory statements that not only support Hamas but couch it toward the destruction of Israel are inflammatory and are absolute speech of hatred.
Chairman Mike Turner, thank you, sir. I hope you come back.
Thank you.
Now, what happened is absolutely unthinkable. It's so cruel. Our next guest was on the phone with his daughter, Deborah. She was viciously killed by Hamas terrorists. His daughter died, along with her husband, while protecting their 16-year-old son from harm. Deborah's father is an Israeli scholar and retired Brandeis professor. Ilan Troen joins me. Good evening, sir. And, of course, there are no words that I can offer you that in any way can bring you solace in terms of the cruelty imposed on your family. But, I feel deeply sorry for you, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you do.
Sir.
And helpfully, so many other people have expressed that too.
Sir, the reason that I wanted you to come here, besides I wanted to have the opportunity to say that to you, is because this river to the sea, the origin, you are a scholar, and I want you to set the record straight for viewers. There's no doubt in my mind what it means, but you tell me what it means. This is your field. This is your study.
First, the whole notion of from the river to the sea as the borders of Palestine was invented in 1922 by Winston Churchill, who was a colonial secretary for the British Empire, established those as the borders of Palestine. However, Jews and Arabs could not agree on who would control that territory, so in 1937, the British established the Peel Commission that didn't look for the truth of whose claims are better, superior, more moral, more historically accurate. They said, we need a pragmatic solution to this conflict. And they decided on partition. So the notion from the river to the sea means one country, one people controls all of it. The notion of partition means a pragmatic approach to allowing for two states to emerge. And that notion that was initiated in 1937 was confirmed by the United Nations in 1947, that wanted to create both a Palestinian Arab state and a Jewish state. It was again confirmed after the 1967 war. It is still the solution on record. To say that one wants Palestine should be from the river to the sea, and a Palestinian Arab state means ethnic cleansing and genocide. It is by the definition of the IHRA, that's an International Holocaust Remembrance Association associated with the European Union, it means it is identified as a clearly anti-Semitic statement. If the congresswoman were in Vienna today, she would be arrested because that statement is now beyond the pale and is legally considered to be anti-Semitic.
Sir, thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate that. And again, I don't even know what to say about the atrocity committed on your family. But thank you for speaking to me. Thank you, sir. Still ahead, Hunter Biden's special counsel David Weiss answers questions behind closed doors. That when the record continues. It is Election Day. Voters in at least 37 states are hitting the polls. We have our eyes on a few key races. First, Kentucky. It's a very red state. In 2020, Trump beat Biden by a whopping 36 points, so you would expect in tonight's race for governor the Republican would be a shoo-in. The Republican candidate is the current Kentucky State Attorney General Daniel Cameron. But the incumbent, Governor Andy Beshear, is a Democrat. He's seeking re-election. Not only is he, though, facing strong headwinds, with Kentucky being a red state. When Beshear won last time in 2019, it was by less than 1/2 point. There's also a governor's race in Mississippi. Republican Governor Tate Reeves is looking to win a second term. He's up against Democrat Brandon Presley. And if the name Presley does sound familiar, that's because it is. Brandon Presley's grandfather and Elvis Presley's grandfather were brothers, making the candidate Elvis's second cousin. Got that? Sort of confusing. Okay, moving on. In Ohio, voters are deciding 2 ballot measures that are grabbing national headlines: abortion rights and marijuana legalization. Ohio is the only state this year voting on abortion rights. In the Commonwealth of Virginia, this election night is sure to be a sizzler. Control of both the state's House and Senate are up for grabs. Whatever happens tonight, just across the Potomac River, is sure to send a political message, good or bad, to President Biden. And in Pennsylvania, a very important swing state, there is an election that could impact you, even if you don't live there. Think about this. Voters in Pennsylvania will be selecting a new state Supreme Court justice to replace former Chief Justice Max Baer, who died last year. Now, pay attention to this race, because you know how important the high courts are in swing states. They often decide important election challenges that impact presidential elections. By the way, Democrats currently hold a 4-2 majority on Pennsylvania's highest court. Former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum joins me. Good evening, sir. And I'm going to ask you what you're watching. But first, I want to ask you about this Pennsylvania Supreme Court race. I think this one's a fascinating one. You're from Pennsylvania, it's your state. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is a race that's very interesting. The Democratic candidate is the brother of a Supreme Court judge who was thrown off the court for bad behavior. Sending lewd and horrible emails out to actually his brother. Yet they nominated him. It's a strange race, and the Republican is a sitting judge, what I would consider a very moderate Republican. But they've tried to paint her using abortion. So this is another case, just like in Virginia and almost every other state, where the Democrats are using the abortion issue to try to galvanize the Democrats to turn out on this, and it will be a bellwether. I think of all the races, this is the biggest bellwether of the night, because the other states, Kentucky, Mississippi, Virginia, they're not swing states in a presidential election. Pennsylvania is, and so seeing how this race goes will have, I think, more impact on the presidential race than anything.
All right, your other state, your adopted state, is Virginia. How important is what's going on in Virginia tonight?
Well, it's important. Again, abortion issue, big issue that was pounded away. Someone who watches TV ads down there, it was just 100% abortion on the Democrat side. And yet, it looks like, the Republicans are doing well. I mean, there's a really good chance in a very blue state for Governor Youngkin, who's run as a very, mainstream Republican, to pick up both houses. They have one house by one vote right now. The other, they're down 2, but they have a realistic chance of picking up both. And again, that Virginia in the past, and these off-year elections right before a presidential race, has been a bellwether. And so if Republicans do well there, in spite of being outspent, this is a huge signal for the Bidens and the Trumps.
So everybody's watching. I mean, how active has I take it the Biden campaign's hasn't been active in this at all, but I imagine the DNC has been very active in this Virginia race.
They have, but the RNC is not. To my knowledge, the RNC has not put any money in Virginia, which I think is sort of a stunning thing. But last time around, if you look at previous Virginia governor's races and these types of races, the RNC has always been late to the table in trying to swing Virginia the other way. I give a lot of credit to Glenn Youngkin. He's raised the money. He's campaigned across the state. And who knows whether he's been asked the question whether he's interested in running for president. If he was to be successful tonight, he's given very cagey answers. So we'll wait and see how that turns out.
And of course, Virginia is a term-limited state. He can't be governor again, so he's going to have his eyes on the future. Senator Rick Santorum, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.
Turning now to 2424. Oh, wait. I was kidding. Our 2024 segment is on vacation tonight. It'll be back tomorrow night because, as noted with Senator Rick Santorum, it's election night. Political White House and Washington reporter Daniel Lippman joins me. So how important is this night tonight?
I think it's
important, but it's not make or break for either Biden or Trump.
You don't think they're nervous a little bit? Well, I would think Biden with Virginia.
I don't think Biden is going to stay up, if he can stay up too late, until like 2 a.m. until they've decided every vote. And so I think he wants a good night to kind of stop the bedwetting of Democratic strategists that we've been seeing. But I think Democrats can shake it off if Republicans do well tonight, because they can say, hey, it's Mississippi, it's Kentucky. These are not Democratic states. These are not even purple states. It's kind of a fluke that we even have a Democratic governor in Kentucky.
But when you look in Kentucky, it's a fluke you say that there's a Democratic governor. He won just by a hair when he ran last time. So and Trump won, and clobbered Biden in Kentucky. So I mean, it's pretty surprising that they have a Democratic governor to begin with.
Yeah, and Bashir, his dad, was actually a governor of the state too, which helps. Almost being a political nepo baby. I'm sure people have seen those articles.
I don't think you'd like to hear that, but anyway.
But it's he has been able to be pretty moderate and be popular. We have states that are very blue, like Massachusetts, that have had Republican governors like Mitt Romney in the past. And so people sometimes, and you have a state like Virginia, which is not really up for grabs in the presidential race, being governed by a Republican with Glenn Youngkin, who has national ambitions, although he has been saying, I interviewed him back in January, and he and his team were saying, hey, just wait until my focus is winning the legislature in November, then get back to me on the presidential, but it's kind of too late.
What do you make of the sort of the heavy hitter Democratic strategists like David Axelrod now coming out saying Biden should step aside? I mean, wouldn't you think those would be private conversations, or do you think they've had them and they weren't successful? And do they have a horse in this race now?
I don't think Axelrod talks to Joe Biden every day, giving him his advice. That was his job for President Obama.
But I mean, this is a pretty big deal for Axelrod to come out and say that.
He is like an eminence gris in Democratic strategic circles. He's almost like Karl Rove in Republican politics. And so I think he is genuinely concerned about the trend lines, and we're a year out from the election, and the numbers have not moved, or they've gotten worse for Biden.
But wouldn't you think that you'd come out, you might throw out a name? I mean, like, who's sitting there waiting in the wings? I mean, it's not a huge bench right now.
No, we're looking at Harris, who would be the
she has worse numbers. She has worse numbers than the president.
I know, but the party is not going to. It's going to be very hard if Biden has a health issue for Harris to not win, because Democrats, their base.
You mean not to get the nomination? You mean not to get the nomination? It'd be hard for her to win the presidency, though, maybe.
A lot of the average Democratic voter in a primary election is a black woman. So to say, hey, even if she's not that popular, that they're going to just chuck her out and say, hey, I want another white man after 250 years of white men leading our country. No, I don't think that would happen in the Democratic Party.
I think they've got a little bit of a problem, but both parties have a little bit of a problem. Daniel Lippman, thank you.
Thanks, Greta.
Still ahead, Special Counsel David Weiss on the hot seat. Did he fess up? Why gave Hunter Biden that sweetheart plea deal only to have the federal judge torpedo it? Plus, we're going to go live to Israel to ask the IDF what is next for Gaza. That when the record continues. Today, Israel marks 1 full month since Hamas terrorists slaughtered 1,400 innocents. Israeli Defense Forces spokesperson Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus joins me. Good evening, sir, and can you bring me up to date with what's going on?
Hello, Greta. Thank you for having me. 30 days since somebody is killed has special religious significance according to the Jewish faith. So it's not only a month, but it's really a collective time of mourning that started on the October 7th and has continued this entire month. The situation on the ground is that we continue to fight. Our troops are advancing further into the urban terrain of Gaza City. We are fighting Hamas strongholds, making good progress, uncovering different parts of their infrastructure. And as going by, we're also letting the international media in, and so will Newsmax be on the ground in order to show the realities and the things that we uncover.
How do you, when you go into the center of Gaza, into Gaza City, how do you tell the difference between someone who's Hamas and someone who is not Hamas?
Yes, that is difficult because we've seen Hamas fire rockets and RPGs in plainclothes. and we've seen them do all kinds of military activity without wearing any uniform. When they came into Israel, by the way, they were in uniform, either Hamas uniforms or uniforms that were supposed to look like Israeli uniforms. So we know that there's a wide variety. The general rule of thumb in this very challenging combat environment is based on actions. If somebody has means, as in a weapon, and if their actions are hostile, then we determine them to be hostile, a combatant, and we act accordingly. If not, we are cautious because we do not want to hit and kill civilians. The area is still full of civilians, and we're trying to get them out, but until we do, until we're sure that all the civilians are not there, then the rules of engagement are still cautious.
Are you taking Hamas prisoners?
We have, in Israel, there's about 1,000 both dead Hamas combatants and prisoners that we've taken. They're in Israel. They are the ones that invaded into Israel and were part of the massacre of October the 7th, and they've been in Israel ever since. I cannot say exactly how many are dead out of the 1,000 and how many are Hamas operatives that we caught alive. And inside the fighting in Gaza, so far I'm not aware of live terrorists. All of the reports that I'm getting are of engagement between terrorists and Israeli troops, ending with dead terrorists or terrorists that immediately try to disappear using the tunnel network that they've built.
You know, I know it's incredibly complex, but if I were Hamas and I saw the IDF coming in, I would want to blend in very carefully with the non-Hamas population there. So for some reason, I suspect that there are people sort of mixed in that you'll never be able to identify.
Yes, I think that you're right, but I think that it is a small percentage of Hamas combatants because most of them are hiding underground in their tunnels. And I think that they're trying to wait out the situation. Maybe once they run out of fuel or water or air, they will surface, and then we'll be waiting for them. But, you know, fighting a terrorist organization, that is one of the challenges that we face. Similar things that the US faced in Iraq and Afghanistan. Difficult to distinguish between a combatant and a not combatant, but we are doing our best to distinguish between the two.
Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus, thank you, sir, and good luck, sir.
Thank you.
Earlier, I spoke with former Israeli ambassador to the United States and current Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs, Ron Dermer. Nice to see you, sir.
Good to be with you, Greta.
Sir, tell me, I expect that Israel will do as it said it would, and that's eliminate Hamas. And I know that you're on the War Cabinet. What is sort of the expectation of the plan once Hamas is eliminated?
So we haven't had that discussion in depth. That would actually be a discussion that would happen in our Security Cabinet, which is a broader forum as well. I think there are many different ideas, and there could be differences of opinion about what should happen the day after. But I think there's a certain basic agreement on a few things, and one of them is it's not going to be Hamas. You're going to have a new reality in Gaza, and that Gaza can't represent a threat to the state of Israel. Our war goals, as we made clear from the beginning, is to, and you said, is to eliminate Hamas's military capability, essentially destroy that capability, to end Hamas's rule in Gaza, to ensure that Gaza doesn't pose a threat to the state of Israel, and also to bring back our hostages. That's also very important. Now, the day after, I think a lot of people are talking about it, but right now we've got, you know, thousands of Israeli soldiers in the Gaza Strip fighting this really brutal enemy, which, as the president said, is worse than ISIS, and as the German chancellor, he compared them to Nazis. I try to say that one difference, obviously, the scale and the scope is very different in what you're talking about. But Hamas would have killed all the Jews if they could in the state of Israel. And so that sense, you do have that kind of Nazi impulse. But one difference is that the Nazis hid their crimes from the world. They didn't want to, and just like Stalin did, they tried to con the world. They didn't want to tell them of all the horrors that they were perpetrating. Whereas these guys were wearing GoPros, and they were going into these communities, and they were murdering innocent people, killing children in front of their parents and parents in front of their children, burning people alive, raping, torturing, dismembering people. I mean, this is sick. And Israel has to go in and root this out. And we have to do it, obviously, for ourselves and for our own security, Greta. But this is a battle, as the Prime Minister has said from the beginning, it's the forces of civilization versus the forces of barbarism. And civilization has to win. There was a moment, you remember, a few years ago with ISIS, and they started beheading people, which also Hamas did. And everyone understood we cannot allow this to stand, that there has to be an international coalition of countries that are going to go and root this out. We can't give this type of evil territory where they can build up their infrastructure, plan and their attacks, and perpetrate these horrific crimes. So we have to do it. The difference with ISIS is that was an international coalition. Now it's Israel. We're the only boots on the ground. We just tell our American friends, you know, give us the tools, we'll finish the job. And our fight is not just for Israel, it's for everybody. And we intend to fight and to win.
When I was in Israel in July, you know, there was a whole lot of expectation that Saudi Arabia and Israel would normalize relations. Then, of course, we had the unthinkable act of Hamas slaughtering the 1,400 Israelis on October 7th. What is the status of the Saudi-Israel discussions? Is it put on hold?
Well, I think one of the things that the terrorists wanted to achieve, in addition to just murdering Jews and having this horrific attack, is they wanted to destroy any possibility of Israel reaching a peace agreement with Saudi Arabia. Because remember, Hamas is, and your viewers I'm sure know this, Hamas is part of an axis of terror. And you have Iran at the head of it, and they have Hezbollah, and they have Hamas, and they have the Houthis. These are sort of all the arms of this Iranian octopus there. And Iran was threatened by a potential Israeli-Saudi peace deal, which would transform the region, just like the Abraham Accords was a critical first step. The Israeli-Saudi deal is essentially to end the Israeli-Arab conflict, and it's a complete change in the history of the Middle East. It's a pivot of history for the Middle East. And Iran was trying to stop it. And there's, you know, Iran is 93% of Hamas's military budget is given by Iran. Remember that. So Iran had every interest to undermine this. Now, my view is that the key to getting an Israeli-Saudi peace, the first and critical step, is a decisive victory against Hamas. We have to cut that arm off the octopus out, because if the axis of terror is not defeated, it just grows, and it grows stronger and stronger. If it is defeated on one front, I think it affects the whole region, and that's why I believe it is possible to move forward with an Israeli-Saudi peace. But if the Abraham Accords, you remember with the Emirates and Bahrain and others, if the Abraham Accords sort of went around Ramallah, the Palestinian city of Ramallah, because we took away the veto from the Palestinians of us reaching peace with our Arab neighbors, I think the road to a peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia goes right through Gaza City. It goes through an Israeli victory. An Israeli victory sets the stage for an Israeli-Saudi peace, which will be great for the future of the region.
Very nice to talk to you. Thank you, sir, and good luck, sir.
Thank you.
Coming up, new testimony behind closed doors about Hunter Biden when the record continues. Today's special counsel David Weiss, who has been in charge of the Hunter Biden investigation, testified behind closed doors. Weiss has been leading the investigation since 2018. Under his watch, the statute of limitations ran on some possible Hunter Biden charges. In today's transcribed interview, Weiss said, quote, "At no time was I blocked or otherwise prevented from pursuing charges or taking the steps necessary in the investigation by other United States attorneys, the tax division, or anyone else at the Department of Justice," end of quote. Republican Congressman for Virginia and member of the House Judiciary Committee, Ben Cline, joins me. Good evening, sir. And I really don't understand this. He's basically saying, I'm the one totally responsible for letting the statute of limitation run on what apparently a lot of people think are tax offenses that should have been further investigated and maybe indicted.
It is outrageous that he allowed these statutes of limitations to expire. He tried to have it both ways, where in his June 10th letter, he indicated that he did not seek authorization for special counsel authority, and yet today he confirmed that, in fact, he did, back in 2022, ask for that authority and was denied by DOJ.
So what's going on with him? I mean, to say, look, I must admit, I think it's bizarre. First, a year ago, with the same set of facts, he says he's in charge, no charges. Then in the spring, after some whistleblowers go to Congress and testify, suddenly he says, oh, wait a second. With the same set of facts, I'm now going to do a misdemeanor. So then he gives the most bizarre misdemeanor deal. And like, I was a criminal defense lawyer. I never got anything like that. And I tip my hat to the defense lawyers. It has crazy immunity clause in it. And the federal judge takes one look at it and says, there's something wrong here. So if that gets torpedoed, then he asks to be special prosecutor with Merrick Garland. He says yes. And then he comes back with 3 felonies on the same set of facts.
It is confusing. As a defense attorney, I'm right there with you. I would have loved to have had that deal, and as a prosecutor, I would have been embarrassed to have offered that type of deal. But what we see is that he is essentially confirming the testimony of the whistleblowers, and the whistleblowers' testimony, their story is standing up to scrutiny, and we're going to be continuing to proceed the investigation into exactly how he requested this authority, who ended up blocking him in 2022, and the contrary view that he puts forward, that he actually had that authority when in fact he did not.
Well, I mean, I don't even know why I don't know why he was appointed special prosecutor in the first place with all the problems behind him. And that's what makes it so weird to me, is that like a guy who's been all over the map, if we're going to appoint a special prosecutor, appoint somebody who can take a fresh look at it and who doesn't have all these weird things in his wake.
Well, he was the safe choice for DOJ. He was already leading essentially the prosecution into Hunter Biden, the offer of this sweetheart deal. And so they knew that they could make him special counsel, arguably in violation of the statute, but in another part of the statute may permit that appointment. But by permitting that appointment, they essentially just doubled down on the flawed theory involving their pursuit of Hunter Biden on these misdemeanor charges.
Congressman Ben Cline, thank you, sir. I hope you come back.
Thanks, Greta.
Former federal prosecutor Joe Marino joins me. Joe, do you think this is weird?
If Joe Biden had said, get me someone who will spend years conducting something that looks like a legitimate investigation, but in fact stonewalls, sabotages, and does everything he could to basically defend the people he's supposed to be investigating, that would be David Weiss. I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous.
What does he get out of this? I mean, to me, it looks like I don't want to be unkind, but it's at best, it looks stupid.
Well, I mean, if he really did have unfettered prosecutorial discretion for the last 5 years, right? It basically special counsel in all but name. Well, then why did he need to get special counsel recognition just 2 months ago? I mean, if he already had that ability.
But that's for almost the additional charges. I mean, there was nothing to prevent him last October when he said, "Oh, we're not going to do anything." There was nothing to prevent him from doing it then.
Yeah, no, that's right. Look, I mean, there are so many reasons to question what he's been doing. Here's one example. September of last year, right? IRS investigators finally get authorization to interview Jim Biden, right, the president's brother, and they are told, you cannot ask anything about the president's knowledge or involvement in these issues.
Why?
Why?
I mean, why? I mean, why? That's
You
why.
would never tell your investigators to have topics that are off limits. It's absurd. And so that's just one example.
But who's doing this? I mean, who's sort of, who's the wizard behind the curtain?
It's David Weiss's office. It's his staff that's running this investigation. So, I mean, look, obviously, he won't do anything unless his back is to the wall, right? So to your point, only when the whistleblowers testified did we see that deal.
But what, I guess sort of think it's like a sort of sense of personal pride and honor. I mean, it's like, if I'd gotten into the mess, I would have tried to jump out a long time, much earlier, and said, look, I got family problems. I need to get out of this. I mean, he just kept doing this.
It's a farce. I mean, it's an insult to our collective intelligence. Joe Biden just might as well shut this down and pardon his son, because that's where this is headed. And basically, it's all but name only. So, yeah, I mean.
But there are so many weird things. I mean, there's another thing where I saw some checks where Jim Biden's wife withdrew, I think, $50,000 in the morning. It says cash. Now, I don't know if that's true, but this is from the Oversight Committee. And then later in the afternoon, she deposits it in another account, a personal. Went from a business to a personal. I'm thinking to myself, who walks around with $50,000 in cash? You know, if you're at the bank withdrawing the $50,000, you're going to put it into another account, you do it right then. I mean, unless the Oversight Committee's got, you know, phony facts or fake news.
I mean, to that point, all this talk about gun charges, that's small potatoes. I mean, the whole point is that Hunter Biden was the conduit which through millions of dollars from foreign sources from Ukraine and China flowed to the Biden family. And so the fact that he couldn't even keep a gun charge deal together.
He wrote this, and the thing that drove me nuts is that he said in this op-ed in the USA Today, he said it's an unloaded gun. It doesn't even matter if it's unloaded or not. I mean, there's all these sort of like, you know, things that get injected in this that just are diversion. But anyway. Joe Marino, thank you. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks, Greta.
Coming up, election night, and in just moments, the polls will close in an all-important state. We're going to take you there live when the record continues. Virginia, it's the state to watch. The balance of power in that state is up for grabs. Polls are set to close in just under 10 minutes. National correspondent Logan Raddick is in Ashburn, Virginia with more. Logan?
Well, Greta, this is a major off-year election here in Virginia. All 140 seats in the Virginia General Assembly are up for election, the 40 in the Senate and the 100 in the House. Republicans here in the state, they control the House, and they're looking to flip the Senate. That would give Republicans a supermajority in Virginia, with Governor Glenn Youngkin, a Republican, in the governor's mansion for another 2+ years. And Democrats have been campaigning against that possibility of a Republican supermajority, citing the fact that they would roll back abortion rights if they have that supermajority. Governor Glenn Youngkin has said that if Republicans have the Senate and the House, he wants to pass a law that would put a 15-week abortion ban in place with exceptions for rape, incest, and for health of the mother. But there are other issues that are top of mind for voters in Virginia. I'm in Loudoun County, which has been a focal point in the battle for parental rights. We've heard a lot of national stories come out of Loudoun County in recent years, the sexual assaults that have taken place in Loudoun County schools, the subsequent cover-ups by the school boards, and most recently, 9 students at a Loudoun County high school overdosed on opioids while they were at school. Those are some of the issues that Juan Pablo Segura is running on. He has been endorsed by Governor Glenn Youngkin, who has traversed the state, who spent over $30 million, and Juan Pablo Segura believes that'll help him get over the hump here tonight. Greta.
Logan Raddick, thank you. We'll be watching. Okay, viewers, can you guess what this is? Take a look at this. You will never guess. Now, I'll tell you when the record continues, but take a look at that. This is a trick. Okay, did you guess a porcupine's quills with peanut butter stuck on them? If yes, bingo, you got it right. Meet Rico. Somehow he got peanut butter on the top of his head while enjoying his snack. Rob Schmidt Tonight is up next.
The decades of manipulation and propaganda that gave Hamas a massive Western support system. Let's check it out. Welcome to Rob Schmidt Tonight, commercial free on this Tuesday night, and it is election night as well, a big night in Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, Texas, other places. Our election desk is all over it. We'll be checking in with them throughout the hour. But we begin tonight with how Hamas won over so much of the West, as evidence of rabid anti-Semitism and terrorist sympathy suddenly surround us. Beyond the shock is the need for some kind of an explanation for how this happened in this great country. How the United States and the broader West, bastions of freedom and sophistication, been harboring so much barbarism and lunatic ideologues who seem to support the destruction of what we have built here, what they take advantage of. Some estimate the pro-Hamas D.C. march that we saw on the White House over the weekend was as large as 100,000 people. 100,000. That is insane. Ostensibly a massive show of support for a horrific massacre that was 1 month ago today. Here's some of the worst of what we have heard in the past month, and including at that rally in Washington. The results of a long-fought ideological war launched against the United States and against the West.
Why are you ripping these down?
Because it's false information. And you support IDF? I support Hamas.
And the several other joyful and powerful images which came from the glorious October 7th.
Yes!
Nothing will ever be able to take back this moment of triumph, this moment of resistance, this moment of surprise, this moment of humiliation on behalf of the Zionist entity.
Terrifying to look at. So how did we get here? Well, for a long time, the bad actors of the world have sought to brainwash gullible Westerners. The hope, brainwash enough of us so the West self-destructs. Much easier than beating us in a war. The Chinese are experts at this, and they're not alone. Hamas and Iran play this game as well. The Wall Street Journal reports that as far back as 30 years ago, Hamas leaders in 1993 were enraged by the Oslo Peace Accords signed between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. You remember this famous picture of Yitzhak Rabin, Yasser Arafat, and Bill Clinton on the White House lawn? Well, this photo enraged Hamas, which didn't have control back then. And the FBI recorded Hamas members conspiring to sabotage peace and also begin working to alter American perception of the terror group. Our college campuses, representatives of Hamas, describe Israel in terms designed to trigger clueless young progressives, quote, using the language of post-colonial theory to tar the Israelis as European settlers. Last week, Vice reported a Hamas leader claiming the same type of racism that killed George Floyd is being used by Israel against the Palestinians. Now, you can get mad if you want to, but you have to admit that kind of tactic is brilliant, and it is paying off. Our top universities are now loaded with spoiled, brainless kids screaming for Palestine, unbothered by the slaughter of children unwilling to comprehend the truth of the situation at all. Hamas knows our weak spots, and the polls show, as far as support, the tide is quickly turning against Israel because this is working. Just 1 month after those heinous attacks, today Republicans and victims' families had to get out there in front of this country to try and change a tide that is turning against them.
He was shot in the arm, and he wasn't able to stop the bleeding. And he was trying to say his last words. He actually said, I want to say my last words. We're not going to survive it. Nobody survived it. Everybody is killed.
Stories that are still very raw and very real, although the establishment media has clearly moved the focus from that and over to the refugees in Gaza. We've seen that happen, and is back to reporting news based on their own perception of oppression. Yesterday in Southern California, a Jewish man was killed by a pro-Palestinian protester. A story the American press was very desperate to conceal. 69-year-old Paul Kessler, seen here holding Israel's flag. Witnesses say he was attacked by a pro-Hamas protester who smashed a megaphone into his head. Kessler fell to the ground, where he died. The media immediately worked to make very solid witness details of a story that they should have been reporting truthfully. Well, they made them as hazy as possible. Look at how it's shown here. A man died, not a Jewish man, just a man. They don't want you to know who. They want you to just move on and read something else. Now imagine the coverage if the roles in that story were reversed. Think of how it would have been covered. In 2017, we saw one protester who was killed in Charlottesville. Joe Biden still talks about that 6 years later. Not with this story. We see this constantly in media coverage, always seeking to boost stories that meet their narrative. One story they're certainly going to ignore, a new report that at least 14 United Nations staffers working with Palestinian refugees have publicly celebrated the Hamas terror attacks on innocent people, on innocent families, on their social media. These are UN workers. Guess who funds the UN? You do. It's a cancer that is all around us, and with the media now beginning to capitulate to it, it's only going to get worse. And it's not just about Israel anymore. That's one thing we all need to understand, as the brother of an Israeli hostage told everybody earlier today.
This is a wake-up call, not only for Israel, not only for the Jewish community. This is a wake-up call for all of you here, all of America, all of Europe. You are next.
Exactly right. Dan Senior was a foreign policy advisor in the Bush administration, also the author of The Genius of Israel. Dan, good to have you back on. It is fascinating to see how long Hamas has been working to create this radical support system inside our own country, and how efficiently they've done it, especially with our younger people and our college campuses.
Yeah, I got to say, if we're hoping to send our young people to elite U.S. colleges to make them smarter, we're obviously not getting our money's worth, because their brains, their minds, their worldviews are being totally corrupted. It is completely depressing. I say this, Rob, as an American. I say this as a Jew. I say this as a son of a Holocaust survivor. I've never felt so vulnerable than this. I didn't expect this. I mean, just the way you chronicled everything that's been happening, which I kind of know, but when you see it all laid out, just in that arc, you're like, how on earth did this happen? And it's, on the one hand, it's the oldest hatred, right? It's 2,000 years plus old, and it just, it rears its ugly head about every couple decades and every century. But I never expected it quite like this, on an attempted genocide of the Jewish people in Israel.
I never thought they'd be so comfortable doing this just out in the open. I never thought that you'd see a story as awful as what we saw a month ago, and within a couple weeks, you'd see people proud to support it. And you'd see people out there tearing down the pictures of little kids that have been kidnapped. God knows what's happening to them, saying that the whole thing is a lie, calling it deserved, saying that the Zionists earned this. I mean, the things that we saw, I didn't think that. I mean, I think we all knew that there's hate everywhere, right? I mean, there's all over the world, every culture, every race, there's hate. There's always that. There's always racism, there's always hate. It exists everywhere, despite what they want to tell you. I didn't think that in this country, that these lunatics, that this fringe would be so comfortable just marching in our streets with this, but they feel like they have some kind of moral right to do so.
I was on Saturday night, a friend of mine, Lior Raz, who's the star of the television show, the Netflix series Fauda, which is co-creator of the show, which is an Israeli television show based on an undercover unit in the IDF, was in town. I read about him in my book. He's the basis of a chapter. His girlfriend was killed by Palestinian terrorists. And when there was that prisoner swap in 2011 for one Israeli prisoner to get back, this Gilad Shalit, in return for about 1,100 Palestinians in Israeli prisons, some of whom were serving multiple life sentences, including the one Hamas leader who was the architect of this attack on October 7th. He had multiple life sentences. He was in prison. He had cancer. Israeli doctors saved his life. He got out of prison in that prisoner swap, went back to Gaza, and he architected this attack. I was with Lior Raz at this event Saturday night, which was an effort to raise money for some of the recovery and relief efforts in Israel. And there were all Israelis there, mostly Israelis who live in New York. And they came up to me, and some Israelis from Israel. And they came up to me. I was one of the only non-Israelis there. And they said to me, hey, look, we're going through hell right now in Israel, but we'll be okay. We'll win this war against Hamas. They said, we're resilient. That's what my book is about. It's all about Israeli resilience and how Israelis bounce back and how the society bounces back. And they were describing to me what's happening on the ground, which is what we write about in our book. They said, we'll be okay. I said, you're going to be okay? They said, yeah, we're worried about you. We're worried about the United States.
Yeah.
We're worried about the West. What the hell is going on in your country?
Yeah.
So that's how jarring it is to watch it from Israel's perspective. They're like, these are the most elite institutions in your country, in your society, and they've been completely hijacked by hatred, anti-Semitism, and deranged thinking, and violence.
And if we don't take them back, you wonder what this country looks like in 20 years. Right now, the left is trying to extort Joe Biden into selling Israel out. We're seeing this in a lot of different ways. They, I think, at a minimum, want Biden to go neutral in this conflict. Take a listen to radical terror sympathizer Linda Sarsour. She had some recent comments, very interesting to listen to.
I'd rather have somebody in office that's going to be direct with me. That at least we know what to expect from them, even if it's something horrible. Versus people in office who claim to be our allies, who claim to care about our communities, but are literally funding the genocide that is happening in Palestine right now, not just with money that Israel's been receiving for decades, but new money that this Democratic administration just gave to the state of Israel to murder our people.
That's a threat. That's a threat right there. There's an election coming in a year. Abandon Israel or you're not going to win in 2024.
Yeah, and also she has her history completely wrong. Israel left Gaza in 2005. So Israel has not been occupying Gaza or killing Gazan Palestinians for 18 years. Hamas took the place over. Hamas was in charge. But it's another point that I think is worth mentioning, Rob. You know, in our book, we focus mostly on Israeli Jewish life, but we also focus on Israeli Arab life. So there's a vibrant minority of Israeli citizens who are Arab Muslims in Israel right now. And they are horrified by what Hamas has done. An Arab broadcaster who lives in Israel went on the air, gave this powerful statement that went viral because she also did it in English, where she says, I stand with my Israeli brother and sisters. I do not stand with Hamas. Okay, they are the enemy. You have example. There's a member of Knesset of an Israeli Arab party. We write about that party in our book. One of the Knesset members started to question whether or not there were actually beheadings of babies. And the head of the party, Mansour Abbas, an Arab Muslim in the Israeli Knesset, demanded that that member of Knesset get kicked out of the party and kicked out of Knesset. So inside Israel, Arab citizens, who are the minority, but they're there, they are standing up and speaking truth. While these people who you're pointing to, like Linda Sansour and Rashida Tlaib, who live in the comfort of life here in the U.S., are doing the opposite. They're undermining the very people who are actually the Arabs in the Middle East who are trying to stand up to Hamas.
Right. Fascinating. Scary and fascinating. Dan Senior, thank you so much. Always good to see you. We appreciate it.
Good to see you, Rob. Thanks.
All right, I want to turn now to our election coverage here tonight. It is a bit of an interesting night. There's some good bellwethers here that we're following tonight. Polls just closing in Virginia, where state elections are going to be a big referendum on popular conservative Governor Glenn Youngkin. I want to go over to Jen Pellegrino and the rest of our election desk with more on that. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Rob. Great to be with you here in New York tonight. Well, folks, we're watching now as the polls just closed in the Commonwealth of Virginia, where we're watching the battle for the state legislature there, and in Kentucky, where there is a key governor's race between incumbent Democrat Andy Beshear and Republican challenger Daniel Cameron. With me, former Pennsylvania Senator Rick Santorum, as well as senior political analyst and host of Saturday Agenda, Rob Astorino. Gentlemen, great to have you here tonight as we watch these races, the numbers coming in. Let's start with Virginia here, Senator. We were talking about this earlier tonight. You know, some of the issues that we're hearing among voters that the Youngkin camp has outlined are, you know, the cost of living, the safety and crime issues, education, obviously a big issue in Virginia, and of course, across a lot of these races tonight, abortion on the ballot as well. What should we be looking for?
Well, obviously the Democrats, not just in Virginia, but in most states, have focused in on the abortion issue. You mentioned these other issues, inflation, crime, the current war that's going on in Israel and how that's playing out, the border. All of those issues the Democrats are getting just crushed on. And so they picked the issue which they thought could motivate their base and potentially suppress some of the Republican turnout, and that's the issue of abortion. And they've run it, and they've run it hard. We'll wait and see whether abortion, which was a very important issue and helped the Democrats a lot in 2022, whether it can do it again in 2023.
And Rob, of course, also looking at Kentucky as well, the gubernatorial race there. You've got the incumbent, obviously, Andy Beshear, Democrat in a deep red state, a state that went for Trump both in 2016 and 2020. And then you have Trump-backed Daniel Cameron, African-American, the current attorney general there. What do you expect out of this race?
Well, Kentucky is a very red state, but they sometimes vote statewide for a governor every now and then to kind of balance things out, and that's what happened. Beshear's father was Kentucky governor a while ago, so they have that kind of lineage. And he's been fairly popular, sometimes moderate, but, you know, look, he's got headwinds, the national headwinds. Biden is very unpopular nationally, especially in a red state like Kentucky. Both houses are deep red and controlled by Republicans. And Cameron was outspent $17 million to $4 million in this race, and it is neck and neck
So I think it's going to be very, very close. I would give the edge because of the issues and because of the national climate right now to the challenger, Cameron, actually, as opposed to Cameron. But that's a lot of money he outspent him by.
Yeah.
I
I think it's going to be definitely one to watch.
Yeah.
I don't give the edge to Cameron. I think that when you get outspent that badly, and if you look at Bashir's numbers, he was very popular heading into this election. He had a big lead early. It's closed. The question is it closed enough, and what caused that closing? And we can talk about that the next time we're out
we've
here.
got a lot to focus on tonight. We'll be with you throughout the night. Rob, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right, guys, thanks so much. Laura Trump joins me now, along with Matt Schlapp, the CPAC chairman. I want to talk more about what we're going to see tonight. Good to have you both on. Matt, we have some pretty big elections tonight. Control of the Virginia House and Senate hangs in the balance. Could say a lot about Youngkin, a lot about abortion. Governor's races in Kentucky, Mississippi, and an actual abortion vote in Ohio. Matt, this is the issue that I think the Democrats are going to have to lean into as hard as they can because they don't have anything really else to run on. So they're going to have to fearmonger over abortion. What's your take?
Yeah, so what the Democratic Party's position on abortion, Rob, is no regulations at any point in a pregnancy, taxpayer funding of as many abortions as possible, and then you have the kind of evil chorus of publicly traded corporations paying for the abortions of their employees, flying them first class, putting them up in nice hotels to go to blue states where they have the most liberal laws. Now, the only other countries that have the type of laws that the Democratic Party are advocating here in America are places like China and North Korea. Even countries in Europe like France, who are seen as pretty liberal societies on these cultural questions, have common sense regulations, have waiting periods, have limits on late-term abortion. So what the Democrats are pushing is very, very extreme. And I agree with Rick Santorum. We'll see what the voters think. But I think it's a very dangerous thing for them to say, we love China's abortion policies. Let's bring it to Ohio.
Certainly is, but we've seen this is a tricky subject, especially with the way that they tend to word this issue. They can really they can do some damage with that, and just kind of the way that they speak about it and the way they frame that question. Laura, I want to talk about these incredible new poll numbers that we've seen for former President Trump. New York Times poll showing Trump up big on Biden, 5 out of 6 states, including Nevada, which just blew me away at 11 points, plus 11 in Nevada. Wisconsin, the only state Biden leads in this New York Times Siena poll. That's just 2 points, though, Wisconsin. CBS poll revealing Trump leading among likely voters 51 to 48. That would indicate, that he could win the popular vote. Tim Ryan, former congressman who lost to J.D. Vance in that Senate race in Ohio, we remember. This is what Tim Ryan said today.
But the whole country wants a move on. And I think that it would be the right thing to do for the president to not run. What's in the best interest of the country here? And I don't mean to be so frank. I love Joe Biden. He's done a great service to this country. He saved this country by beating Donald Trump. But now it's time for us to just take the next step.
I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Laura. They certainly don't seem too happy.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't. They have a president with a dismal approval rating at around 39%. I'd like to talk to the 39% who think Joe Biden is doing a great job. I think he is right in saying they need someone else, because the idea that they're going to run a guy who they had to run the first time around from his basement because he was so bad. Of course, they used COVID as their cover. What's the cover this time around? How are they actually going to campaign Joe Biden? They ought to be very nervous. But what a ridiculous statement that Joe Biden saved this country. Are you kidding me? Have you seen the fully open southern border? Have you seen the 100,000 Americans dying from fentanyl every single year? Have you seen the fact that we are on the doorstep of World War III? He didn't do anything but destroy this country. That's why I'm very hopeful tonight that voters have awakened and they see things for what they are, and they understand that the only way we keep this country is by electing Republicans into all these offices across the country. And I think it will be the nail in the coffin for the Democrat Party when Donald Trump is reelected on November 5th, 2024. That is the only way we actually save this country.
Crazy polls, plus 11 in Nevada, still just is a mind blower, especially from the New York Times.
We'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Laura Trump, Matt Schlapp, good to see you both. Thank you so much. Rolling on this commercial-free Power Hour Tuesday here, Rob Schmitt tonight. Special counsel David Weiss overseeing the Hunter Biden investigation, testifying behind closed doors to the House Judiciary Committee today. This was a very much anticipated interview. It zeroed in on the scope of Weiss's authority to bring charges against Hunter in his original tax case in Delaware. They're trying to figure out just how much in bed your Department of Justice is with the White House and just how much your government worked to install Joe Biden back in 2020. IRS whistleblowers Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler testified in July, alleging that Biden's DOJ politically interfered in the investigation. Includes Weiss not being the deciding person on whether to bring charges against Hunter Biden. Weiss requesting and being denied special counsel authority as well. Here is House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan on Weiss's testimony. Take a look.
When he was specifically asked, did you ever request special attorney authority under Section 515, Mr. Weiss's response was yes in the spring of 2022. So that goes to the heart of the matter. He requested it, was not given that request, never had that authority throughout the time, and yet he pretends that somehow he did.
So that's what's really interesting here. I want to bring in, there weren't too many people that were in on this, but South Carolina Congressman Russell Fry was there and sat in on the Weiss testimony for about an hour and a half of it today. And sir, thank you so much for coming on. I think at the core of this is what we have here with Weiss is this man that obviously was clipped, as he tried to do his job. His wings were clipped, but he's still protecting the people that clipped his wings when he did this investigation. He is still behind the DOJ, and that's why they're allowing him to be the special counsel. And I think we learned a lot about that today.
No, I think you're exactly right. You look at this. I mean, this investigation has been going on for 4 or 5 years with this U.S. attorney. And when he requested this status, the special attorney status under 515, in the spring of 22, and he wasn't given special counsel authority until just August of this year, he had to kind of run the traps and go to the Central District of California, the District of Columbia, to ask for permission from other U.S. attorneys to bring charges. And so we wasted 1.5 years. We had, multiple charges from 2014 and 2015 related to Hunter's business dealings with Burisma that were not pursued because the statute of limitations ran. We didn't get a lot today, but I think that was the biggest revelation, was that he had requested this in the spring of 22.
Yeah, I mean, it's hazy because they want it to be hazy. He's obviously protecting the DOJ, which makes it so much harder. You have Shapley and you have the two, Ziegler and Shapley, that have come out to say what's really going on here. But I mean, just emphasize how this is such a huge story, because you have a corrupted person that's now running this country. And what we had a DOJ that knew that this man was corrupted, but was so eager to push our former president out of the White House and to install anybody but him that they concealed all of this. And they refuse to investigate this. And it just, you now have a president in the White House that is ostensibly compromised, that has taken truckloads of money. Politicians don't make a lot of cash. And he has taken a ton of money from places that are very scary in a world that's deteriorating very quickly.
No, I think you just hit the nail on the head. On one side, you have the actual transactions themselves, where you've got $40,000, $200,000 in loan repayments that came out just last week. Yeah. You have the actual transactions themselves and the accountings that go on. But then the flip side of this is kind of the cover-up, if you will. And the only people who have been consistent this entire time have been the IRS whistleblowers. Their stories that check out. They're synonymous with each other. They have been corroborated by other witnesses. The people whose story has changed have been the DOJ and the FBI since the beginning. If your viewers know this, but Weiss changed his story multiple times in letters. Yeah. And finally, because of the microscope that they are under, they're trying to provide some level of clarity, if you can call it that. But I think it's a farce. And I think if you really dig into this, the American people see it for what it is.
They do. Weiss is a company man, and that's a really scary thing with a government that has this much power. Congressman Fry, we appreciate you coming on. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, we've been talking a lot about it. Newsmax Plus just launched, our new streaming app that lets you watch Newsmax on your home TV or your smartphone anytime, anywhere. If you're a regular cable or satellite subscriber, you can continue watching Newsmax like you're doing now. Nothing changes, but many people love Newsmax Plus. In fact, in just a few days, we've had more than 100,000 people sign up. They're just like you, tired of big media, and they love Newsmax. Sign up for a free trial today. Just go to newsmaxplus.com, sign up on your TV or smartphone, start watching. Newsmax Plus works just like Netflix, any other app that you have on your television or on your phone. You can watch myself, Greg Kelly, Eric Bolling, Greta, and all the rest. You can see our great analysts, Carrie Lake, Mike Huckabee, Alan Dershowitz, so many more. With a Newsmax Plus subscription, you also get access to all our show archives, great news specials with President Trump, stories about the Biden administration, the latest news on the 2024 race for the White House, and a lot more. Newsmax Plus is already big. It's getting a lot bigger. Download the Newsmax app, start watching, start your free trial. If you like us, you can continue. There's no risk. A monthly subscription costs less than most of the drinks at Starbucks. Think of it that way. Get started today. Go to newsmaxplus.com, sign up for the free trial. All right, a new developments as we continue to expose what's been dubbed the censorship industrial complex. House Judiciary uncovering hundreds of secret reports from Stanford University that were only given up after threats of being held in contempt of Congress. The documents show that in the run-up to the 2020 election, the federal government, disinformation experts at universities like Stanford, and big tech elites all work together through a group called the Election Integrity Partnership, the EIP, Election Integrity Partnership, to censor and surveil American speech, including swaths of true information, opinions, and even jokes. So here's how it worked. Election Integrity Partnership stakeholders, including the federal government, would submit misinformation reports over content that threatened their power. EIP would analyze the report and find similar content across platforms. They would then submit that report to big tech, even providing recommendations on how to censor that material. The censorship was very biased towards conservatives, exactly as you'd expect. President Trump got loads of it. Even here at Newsmax, we enjoyed plenty of censorship as well, at the behest of our government and the elites that really control your society. So just remember that the people screaming the very loudest about protecting democracy are the same ones aggressively working to subvert it so that they can attain perpetual power. Just keep that in mind as you live your life. Ben Weingarten has reported extensively on this. He's a senior contributor at The Federalist. Dr. Jay Bhattacharya is a professor of medicine at Stanford University, who was the target of this same brand of censorship during the COVID pandemic. Gentlemen, good to have you both back on. Ben, in your new article with Real Clear Investigations, you write that EIP scoured hundreds of millions of social media posts for content disfavored by the government about election processes and outcomes, and collected it from the operation's governmental and non-governmental partners to identify the offending speech. So I assume much of the goal was to conceal the fact that the 2020 election was clearly much less secure thanks to mass mail balloting and other COVID manipulations. Talk about that, and also talk about, do you see evidence that the EIP was actually working to perhaps install Joe Biden?
Well, look, the EIP existed as a public-private partnership really driven by the national security apparatus. It was a DHS sub-agency, CISA, that helped originate this outfit to mass surveil and then censor Americans' protected speech, core speech on election administration, on outcomes. By the way, looking for wrongthink about election integrity in a cycle unlike any other, where we had election integrity eviscerated just factually in terms of non-legislators making changes to the rules, the aberrant outcomes, the fact that this was the first mass mail-in election in history, and in real time, they were trying to censor Americans who rightly were skeptical of that system and had major questions about it. So, you know, was this about helping Joe Biden? To the extent that this was a referendum on the legitimacy of a system that was under question, yeah, indirectly, and certainly it mass surveilled and censored conservatives because conservatives were the ones who had questions about the loosened election standards that were imposed upon us. This is a massive, massive censorship regime, and most importantly, it was a way for the government to skirt the First Amendment, to get around the First Amendment by outsourcing the censorship. Censorship laundering is a good way to describe it. Yes. And as Dr. Bhattacharya knows, then EIP morphed into the Virality Project, which did for COVID what they originally did for elections.
Dr. J, talk about that. You know, this was led by the university that you work for. And he makes a great point about how they subbed this out to the private sector so that they could go, and that's the way that they can go after free speech, because the government can't do it, but the private sector can.
I mean, it's a censorship two-step, right? So first, you have places like Stanford and other NGOs developing an agenda for censorship, essentially laundering the censorship activities, laundering defamation, basically saying, okay, these are the people that are spreading misinformation. Government actors would then contact the Stanford Internet Observatory and other NGOs and say, these are the bad guys. And then the second step is they go to social media and say, look, you guys have to censor all these people. And if you don't, then the government comes in and says, well, that's a really nice social media company you got there. It'd be a shame if something were to happen to it. Basically, they developed this mechanism to skirt the First Amendment and violate the First Amendment rights and free speech rights of Americans at scale. And you know, the kicker is they defended falsehoods. Right? Ideas like the vaccine stops you from getting COVID, the vaccine that if you get COVID and recover, you don't have any immunity, that masks are like very, very effective even on toddlers. I mean, all these like absolute falsehoods, and they censored people that are criticizing the falsehoods, the shared, you know, peer-reviewed science because it was inconvenient to their agenda. It was absolutely shocking, Rob. Absolutely shocking.
It is shocking, and what it tells you is that, I mean, even the most well-intentioned governments are terrifying when they start trying to control the power and trying to control what you think, regardless of what their intentions are. It's a terrifying prospect. Ben Weingarten, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, let's continue this conversation now with Missouri Senator Eric Schmitt, the former Attorney General from the state of Missouri. And, sir, it's good to have you on. I want to start by asking, you know, a lot of what we learned from House Judiciary, what they've uncovered, is very similar to the types of things you were suing to determine and to find out and to investigate when you sued the Biden administration. How much, you know, our government has been working to censor Americans and to just trample our First Amendment. Talk about what we've learned today and how it correlates to your lawsuit.
Well, listen, all of this is shocking, Rob. When you put it all together, I mean, when we filed the lawsuit, we uncovered, you know, email messages and text messages from high-ranking government officials with senior officials at social media companies to suppress speech, almost exclusively conservative speech, whether it was about COVID, whether it was about the Hunter Biden laptop, whatever that was, they were working against conservatives. And you see this information coming out today with the House Weaponization Committee. I'm glad they're continuing that work. And it just shows how vast this really was. This, what do you want to call it, a censorship industrial complex, a vast censorship enterprise. It has censorship in common, and the tentacles run deep. Big tech, biggest companies in the world, institutes of higher learning like Stanford were working with the government to flag these posts. This ought to scare people. And again, whether you're a Republican or you're a Democrat or whatever you are, the idea that the government would be this involved with suppressing speech they don't like is something you'd see out of a Orwellian novel or in China.
Well, you know, what it really proves is something that we shouldn't need to prove if people would simply just know their history, is that government power, it corrupts. It always, this is what it wants. They want to stay in power. They want control. When you have a country of 350 million people, you know, it's honestly understandable why these people would want to control everybody, because it's so hard to control a country this big. But it goes against the whole ethos of what this country's supposed to be. You know, this is our foundation, and they're perverting it, you know, for their own desires. And this is what always happens. This is what government always does. They always try to control people as much as they can. It always escalates to the point where, you know, they have all the power and all the control and you have none.
That's right. And the founders were very well aware of human nature and what had happened before them. And this aggregation of power that people want to have is sort of sown, unfortunately, into the nature of people who get power and want more of it.
Exactly.
And there's no like pandemic except in the Constitution. There's none of that. I mean, the founders were right to put these structural safeguards in place like the First Amendment to ensure that the government can't suppress speech or outsource that, which is what Missouri versus Biden's all about. Right. And why it's really important for us to stand up, because once that's gone, Rob, once you can't speak your mind freely, That's what oppressive governments like to do. And it also, by the way, is not healthy for our republic. People are going to get frustrated by this. So we got to blow it open, be unapologetic champions of free speech, and uncover this stuff and make sure it never happens again.
Yeah, this is why other countries, this is why the Chinese and the Russians, they look at freedom and they say it's outrageous to try to run a country like this, because they love the control and they want to have the control, and they don't think that you can let people control their own lives and be kind of, control their own destinies. As far as 2024, we've seen what they were capable of in 2020 to try and oust Trump, to get Biden into power. We've seen what they were able to do. The threat of Trump returning now, I really believe that a lot of these people that are in power right now think that Trump returning to the White House is an existential threat to our lives. And they are high on that idea. And it terrifies me to think of what they're concocting to keep him out of power a year from now.
Well, it's amazing. I always sort of chuckle at the idea that to prevent authoritarianism, we need to suppress people's rights. I mean, that is the very definition. And they're willing to bulldoze the Constitution. Look, I'm supporting President Trump. One of the reasons why I'm supporting him, a very early endorser, is I think he's going to come in here in his second term and fundamentally dismantle the administrative state. I think Americans who love freedom and liberty ought to be applauding that. But it does make certain people nervous, which again is why that Missouri versus Biden lawsuit is so important, the injunction to prohibit this activity. It's why enacting additional safeguards are important. It's why this oversight and investigation the House is doing is so important. We simply cannot allow this to happen again. I think big tech didn't want to see 2016 ever happen again, which is why you saw some of the things they did in 2020. So we got to be on guard. We got to talk to our friends and neighbors about how important this election is, and make sure that the administrative state and all these sort of censorship enterprise stuff doesn't have the same impact it had in 2020.
Well said. Well, your hard work as an attorney general in Missouri is why you're now a senator. I really believe that. Sir, thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Great to be with you, Rob.
All right, some breaking news to get to tonight as we follow these elections happening all around the country. Newsmax can call two races in the state of Kentucky, Attorney General and Secretary of State. Still nothing on the governor's race as of yet, nothing confirmed. Attorney General Republican Russell Coleman, with 53% of the vote, takes out Pamela Stevenson, and Secretary of State Republican Michael Adams wins re-election there. So two Republicans in the state of Kentucky winning, and that's what we know tonight so far. All right, moving along here. It has been 1 month since Hamas showed us the kind of animals that they truly are. 1,400 innocent Israeli civilians massacred, including 32 Americans. Women raped and paraded through the streets. Babies decapitated or burned alive. Entire families slaughtered in their own homes. Hundreds taken hostage. As Israel wages their retaliatory war against Hamas, it seems that the White House is softening on its stance that Israel has the full right to dismantle this terror group by whatever means necessary, now flirting with the idea of a ceasefire, which the radicals that Joe Biden will desperately need in 2024 are demanding.
Pacific and around the world.
If the witness will suspend.
Ceasefire now! Ceasefire now!
This is what makes America great. The power to protest. The power to have free speech. The power of America.
Mr. President, if you care about Jewish people, as a rabbi, I need you to call for a ceasefire right now.
So that's what they're up against. This is the biggest political problem they have seen. FYI, there was a ceasefire everybody's calling for. There was one on October 6th. You can ask Hamas about that. Katie McFarland is a former Deputy National Security Advisor under former President Trump. Waleed Farris is a Newsmax foreign policy analyst. To you both, good to see you. KT, a ceasefire does one thing. It lets Hamas regroup, and it seems like it's becoming an ever more popular idea in this White House.
Yeah, this was always where it was going to go. Why? Because Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, they realize they cannot defeat Israel militarily or economically. The only place and the only way they can defeat or destroy Israel is in the court of world public opinion. That's why they want the human shield casualties. They want their own people to die because they want to say, look at how bad Israel is. A ceasefire, that's a joke. And the idea that, well, humanitarian assistance, that's a joke. Because guess what happens to humanitarian assistance? The minute it goes into the Palestinian areas, Hamas seizes it. Hamas uses it for its own purposes, and what they don't need, they sell. The humanitarian assistance never goes to the Palestinian people. And the U.S. Secretary of State, as much as admitted it last week, when he was asked point blank, can you promise that American aid, this humanitarian aid for Gaza, for the Palestinian people, can you promise us that it doesn't end up in the hands of Hamas? He couldn't promise it. That tells you everything.
Tells you everything. Walid Netanyahu says Israel will have security responsibility over Gaza for an indefinite period of time once they have dismantled Hamas. I really wonder how Iran is going to respond to that. Let's say that they, in whatever way they can, dismantle Hamas for the time being. Now Israel is in charge of that strip of land. How does the world respond to that? How does Iran respond to that?
Well, first of all, the Iranian regime is going to press on as soon as they feel that the Israelis are in the heart of northern Gaza, where most of Hamas infrastructure is. And as soon as they see that many Gazans are fleeing south, remember, there is a sort of a de facto safe zone in the south that the Prime Minister of Israel has announced. Then the Iranians will instruct Hezbollah. Then they will instruct also their cells in the West Bank and probably in southern Syria to engage. What the interest of Tehran is that war will continue and Israel will be bled in terms of international media. That's the plan that they have. That's the plan that they will execute.
KT, we're watching, the left, the media demonize Israel for retaliating, pretending Israel is purposely hitting these civilians. In reality, we know Hamas uses them as human shields. I want to show video from Gaza today. These are civilians carrying white flags, walking alongside Israeli tanks to safety. That is just an incredible piece of video right there. Thousands passing through evacuation corridor the IDF opened in northern Gaza to move these people south. And somehow this escapes so many people when they look at this story. They can't see that for some reason.
They're so wound up in this Palestinian cause, and which is really just a ruse for anti-Semitism. And what you said earlier in your remarks, Rob, I wholeheartedly agree with. This is anti-Semitism. Don't mistake this for something else. This is anti-Israel. It is anti-Israel. It's anti-Israeli. It's anti-Semitic, and they will not rest until they destroy the state of Israel. That is they wake up in the morning thinking, how can we kill Jews? How can we destroy Israel? Yep. It is in their founding constitutional documents. They live to destroy Israel. And what their leaders say is, well, our young men love death more than yours love life. And they think that ultimately they win. They're wrong, but that's how they think.
Yeah. And they're willing to sacrifice as many of their own people as possible to get that result. Walid, KT, thank you both so much. We appreciate it. Polls now officially closed in Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky. Let's get the latest from our election desk. Jen Pellegrino, go ahead.
All right, thanks, Rob. Here with Senator Santorum. And Senator, we look to Ohio, and obviously this is a big key issue to watch here. Issue number one being abortion, which is on the ballot. We saw how that drove voters in 2022 during the midterms. What do you expect this time around, and what this means for 2024?
You always give credit to the left. They're always seemingly one step ahead of Republicans. They teamed up these two ballot initiatives, legalization of marijuana, which brings out a group of voters, and abortion, which brings out another group of voters on the left that may not necessarily agree, but are passionate about it. But bringing those two groups out, I think, has sort of doomed this. I mean, some of the early voting doesn't look good on it. The polls haven't looked good on it. You look at all of the referendum that has been on abortion since Dobbs, and conservatives have lost every single one of them, even in states that are conservative states.
So we're going to be watching this closely. Rob is over at our wall. Rob, you got some numbers for us. Tell us what you're looking at here now.
Well, if you want to start at Ohio, okay, we'll go there and look at the reproductive rights ballot initiative. And it is kind of early still, but it is, yes, running way ahead of no. And, you can see in the big cities and the college towns like The Ohio State and all the other ones, they're going to come out big for these two ballot issues. So you got reproductive rights, and then you've got marijuana. And boy, do they love marijuana on college campuses, so they're going to come out no matter what for that. So those are two interesting races to watch, and I think we know how that's going to end up. Let's go to Kentucky, and this is an interesting, and Rick and I were talking during the break. Bashir is ahead, and he's ahead by a comfortable margin right now. And look at the blue in here, right? Louisville, Frankfort, Lexington. You would expect in the cities for the Democrat to do well. But they're also doing well in the suburbs. And the problem is in some outlying western counties where it should be all red, Beshear is running ahead. That's not the case in the other statewide races. It is basically all red, which means the top of the ticket is running far behind his running mates, and that is not a good thing for Daniel Cameron, who right now, with less than half the vote counted, is down by about 7-8 points, and that's going to be tough to be made up, but we'll see if he can still do that. And Ohio's just closing. Obviously, we're talking about that. Pennsylvania will be closing. Rick knows everything about Pennsylvania. He'll get you all caught up on the real important state Supreme Court races there. And Mississippi, where Tate Reeves, the governor, is running for re-election. Polls are just closing in a little while. And in Rhode Island, nothing yet, but there's one House district race to fill a vacancy, and that is a Republican versus Democrat in the area near Warwick. Back to you guys.
All right, Rob, thank you. So, Senator, we're watching this play out here. Abortion, a big issue, obviously, will indicate how things may go in 2024. Has anything changed since the midterms in terms of the messaging that's going out there, the Republican approach?
It'll be interesting to look at Virginia, because Virginia, actually, Youngkin really went out there and tried to deliver a message, the Democrats as extremists, and settling on this 15-week abortion limitation. And so we'll wait and see whether in a blue state that counter message is effective.
15 weeks seems to be what the Youngkin campaign is saying is the consensus. This is where both sides can maybe come to some agreement. We'll watch and see what happens. Rob, I'm going to send it back to you.
All right. Thanks, guys, so much. Continuing the special commercial-free hour, Rob Schmidt tonight. We turn our focus to Virginia, where voters are deciding whether to empower Republicans with full state House control or let Democrats continue to push back against Governor Glenn Youngkin's agenda. Take a look at what we saw earlier today. A real wacko moment from a leftist attacking a Republican poll worker in the state of Virginia. Watch this.
What are your policy prescriptions?
Have a nice day. You've already
rapist rights?
Yeah.
Involving yourself in people's families and bedrooms?
It's pretty wild.
You animal. You try to steal my vote next year, I'm going to remember you personally.
All right, we're going to go now to national correspondent Logan Raddick, who is in Ashburn, Virginia. We have some breaking news to report as we go to you, Logan, though. It appears that in the state of Kentucky, Governor Beshear has held on and has gotten re-election in the state of Kentucky. So we can put that up on the screen here. Yes, he has taken the election. Incumbent Andy Beshear wins that one against Daniel Cameron, who was on the show last night. A tough loss there for Daniel Cameron. But, Logan, let's go back to Virginia for a second. We're talking about Glenn Youngkin. He's a very popular conservative governor in the state. And this is a big bellwether on just how popular he is in that state with this election tonight.
That's right, Rob. And Governor Glenn Youngkin, keep in mind, he is not on the ballot today. This is kind of the halfway point for his term. And keep in mind that the governor of Virginia cannot run for consecutive terms. So if Governor Youngkin wanted to run again in 2025, he would not be able to do so. He'd have to sit out a term, as is the case here in Virginia. But he has really been trying to rally support for Republicans. And the slogan for Republicans in Virginia, hold the House, flip the Senate, because if they do that, Republicans will have a supermajority for the next 2 years. And then they could have a much easier time passing some of their priorities, including abortion. As Jen mentioned just a short time ago, Governor Youngkin wants to pass a 15-week abortion ban with exceptions for rape, incest, and also the health of the mother. But there are other issues that are top of mind for voters in Virginia. Where I am in Loudoun County, education is still at the forefront. Keep in mind, Loudoun County schools have made national headlines in recent years for sexual assaults in the schools and also cover-ups by the school board. And recently, 9 students overdosed on opioids at a local high school. That is top of mind for Juan Pablo Segura, who is running for Senate here in Loudoun County. He has not arrived at his campaign watch party yet, but again, Republicans will need him to win this seat if they want to flip the Senate and have a supermajority come January. Back to you.
Okay, Logan, thank you so much. Abortion is a big issue tonight. and it's an important one to talk about. In Ohio, voters have the option to vote on a ballot measure that would enshrine the right to abortion in the state constitution. The results, as they stand right now, just about 5% in, but 71 to 29. You can see abortion is a very, very tricky issue in Ohio, which is quite a red state at this point, at least if you look at the last couple of elections. Joining me now is May Mailman, former Trump White House Associate Counsel, now based in the state of Ohio. Also Victoria Cobb, president of the Family Foundation of Virginia. Ladies, thank you so much for coming on. May, I want to start with you. You voted no on the Ohio ballot measure today, but you're in the minority there, a pretty strong minority of the state. Let's talk about that for a second, because I think that it's an interesting topic. You see what Glenn Youngkin is trying to do in Virginia. He's trying to ride that kind of moderate line so that he can try and hold on to the middle so that they can win elections.
Yeah, so the Ohio legislature unfortunately did not ride the moderate line, right? They did not pull a Youngkin. There is a 6-week abortion limit, a heartbeat bill, also no exceptions for rape and incest. So the left was able to pretty easily just say, hey, do you guys want to overturn that law? Very few people were in favor of that law, so it was a really easy argument to make. Sure, I'd love to overturn that law. The problem is that Issue 1 doesn't just overturn that law. Issue 1 in Ohio enshrines a right to abortion all the way up to 40 weeks, and it's not just about abortion. It would enshrine reproductive decisions, which means transgender surgeries for minors. It would take away parental rights, but you know what? We made it easy for them. The Ohio Republicans made it easy for them, in my opinion.
Yeah, Victoria, you're in the state of Virginia, where it's also a big part of the election today. You know, I really feel in my heart of hearts, I think that Roe was barbaric. I think letting it go on that long, it's much longer that people have to make elective abortion decisions in this country than most sophisticated places in the rest of the world. But I also believe that after 50 years of Roe, people have been kind of indoctrinated into this idea that what we've had for all this time has been kind of the way it should be. And I completely agree with an idea that Youngkin's trying to push anywhere around 12 to 15 weeks, I think, is responsible abortion. But I also feel like it's very hard to kind of curb everybody back to reality on what this law should look like. And I think that this is why Republicans are getting a tough dose of reality on this issue.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is Virginia is a deeply divided state on the issue of abortion. There's no getting around that. Every poll will tell you that. And so Governor Youngkin has said, look, I think this is where we can come to consensus. This is where Virginians can come together. And the candidates lined up behind that. And so that was what the Republican ticket was selling across the state. And the Democrats threw millions and millions and millions of dollars, really actually being dishonest about candidates and saying, oh, they're going to ban everything. That really isn't the case, that they wouldn't be able to accomplish that with the Republicans that they have. And so the reality is that's just not that's a lie they tried to give voters. And so we will see whether the millions of dollars outweighed the real message, which is that Republicans, that's the strategy, is they were going to take that 15-week position, and we'll see how that goes. I still think a lot of Virginians care about other issues like the economy and parental rights. And so the Democrats tried sort of this one-trick pony, and eventually that will fail. Eventually that's going to fade, but we'll see how this election came out.
I mean, I hate to look at an issue like this from a political standpoint, but if you're going to, and if you have to, and if we got to save this country next year from all of the chaos on every issue, it just seems like, the idea here is let's take the win on Roe. Let's curb it back to a point where we don't radicalize the other side so that we can actually take back some power and save this country next year. That might offend some people that, are staunchly against abortion. But, when you think about it politically, it's scary to think that, even in Ohio, a very red state, you've got, about 3 out of 4 people are voting to keep the abortion rights that they've had for the last 50 years. That's a scary thing in a very red state. May and Victoria, I want to thank you both so much for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, a break for Election Day in Tish James' witch hunt of a civil trial against former President Trump. Ivanka Trump is expected to testify on Thursday after she was dismissed from the case by an appeals court this summer and enlisted her own counsel. This as the former president heads back to his home state of Florida to hold a rally in the largely Hispanic city of Hialeah, right there in the Miami area. In 2020, the groundswell of Hispanic support in Miami-Dade County allowed Trump to win that state with the best margins the GOP candidate has seen in that county in 16 years. They love Trump in South Florida. We're going to bring you an amazing rally live right here on Newsmax tomorrow night. It's going to start around 8 o'clock, a little before 8 o'clock, former President Trump speaking in Florida. All right, time now for news from the left in this commercial-free show. First up, the U.S. military has been struggling with crisis levels of low recruitment. Polls even show America's confidence in our armed forces is at the lowest level in over 2 decades. So in an effort to win back public perception, the U.S. Army put out a new recruitment ad today. Let me know if you notice anything when you watch it.
Stand up!
Did you notice anything there? It seems the U.S. Army is no longer obsessed with eye-roll-inducing advertising diversity, because that doesn't really work and it doesn't really inspire anything, and people don't like to be pandered to. I didn't see any transgender Indo-Pacific lesbians intently searching a radar screen in that ad. Did you? The kind of nonsense that led to the low recruiting that we see to begin with. That, along with the American left's assault on America's sense of pride, as they vilified our country within an inch of its life. Remember this woke Army ad from 2 years ago that featured a lesbian wedding?
It begins in California, with a little girl raised by 2 moms. I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age.
So they've realized that that ad didn't really play well for the military. Even if you're a lesbian, you don't want to be pandered to. It's humiliating, and nobody wants to fight for a country that ripped down its own flag to replace it with a Marxist rainbow flag. Finally, news from the left. Popular YouTube star Mr. Beast now facing backlash after helping to build 100 wells on the African continent, posting a video announcing that he brought fresh water to 500,000 people in Kenya and Zimbabwe. This kid brought 500,000 people fresh water. He is an absolute hero, but he's being attacked, and you can probably figure out why. Kenyan activists, as well as journalists, are attacking him for spotlighting the failures of the miserable and incompetent Kenyan government. They claim he's perpetuating stereotypes about Africa by quickly and efficiently providing clean drinking water, something their governments have failed to do for decades. Goes to prove that no good deed goes unpunished. Mr. Beast, whose real name is Jimmy Donaldson, addressed the backlash in a tweet saying, quote, "I already know I'm going to get canceled because I uploaded a video helping people. And to be 100% clear, I don't care. I'm always going to use my channel to help people and try to inspire my audience to do the same." Imagine bringing water to 500,000 people and being vilified for it. And do you notice how the government fails its people in Africa, and the journalists run to the government's defense and scold the guy that's saving the lives of the people? Does that remind you of a trend that we're seeing anywhere else? Think about that. And finally, tonight, it is a big election night here in this country. We've been monitoring key races. We just called the Kentucky governor's race for Democrat Andy Beshear. The Republican made a valiant effort there, but it looks like he fell short. Mississippi, Pennsylvania are closing here in about 45 seconds. At 10 o'clock tonight, I'm going to be back with Jen Pellegrino. We're going to have the very latest and all the analysis. It's a big night. There's a lot of things to watch here. Could tell you a lot about what the election in 2024 are going to look like. Some very big topics, including abortion and some others as well. So I'll see you back here at 10 o'clock tonight. And for now, we're going to hand it over to Eric Bolling. See you later.